There was a woman who stood in her bathroom one quiet morning. The light was soft, the steam from her tea drifting in the air. She looked into the mirror and froze. Her hair had turned silver. Fine lines traced the corners of her eyes like tiny rivers. Her skin had softened with the patient touch of time. And then she smiled. Not a smile of resignation, not the polite smile we give when we're trying to hide discomfort, but a deep, genuine smile of recognition, as though she were meeting herself for the very first time. Most of us do not react this way when we notice time's work on our faces. We feel panic, a sense of loss, like something precious is slipping away. But what if we have it completely backwards? What if the very changes we fear are actually the proof that we have lived? So I invite you, wherever you are listening from, to take a moment. Grab a blanket, find a quiet space, perhaps brew some tea. Let this be more than information. Let it be a gentle transformation, because for the next few hours, we will explore a truth that has been kept alive for over 25 centuries in Buddhist teachings. That aging is not something happening to you, it is something being revealed through you. That impermanence is not a thief of beauty, but the very source of it, the village that feared time long ago. Nestled in a valley where cherry blossoms bloomed endlessly, there was a village where no one wanted to grow older. They had found a magical spring that kept them exactly as they were. Every morning they drank its water and admired their unchanged faces. Travelers came from distant lands to see these eternally youthful people. The streets overflowed with festivals, music, and laughter. But with the passing seasons, something subtle began to happen. The villagers started avoiding anything that might remind them of time. They refused to plant trees that would grow tall. They kept no pets for fear of watching them age. They even stopped visiting relatives in other villages for the sight of an elderly face filled them with dread. Children were born, but their growth brought anxiety, not joy. The village library stopped accepting new books. Birthdays were banned. Anniversaries ignored. Slowly, the eternal present they had built became a prison. Even their memories became dangerous. To remember the past was to admit that change had occurred. So they learned to forget. They became strangers to their own stories. The silver-haired monk one day, a Zen monk, arrived. His hair was silver, his eyes bright, his steps deliberate. The villagers were horrified. "Why haven't you drunk from our magical spring?" they demanded. "Don't you want to stay young forever?" The monk tilted his head. "What is young?" he asked. "What is old? Do these belong to the body or the mind?" They pointed to his lined face, his slower gait. "Surely," they said, "he must see he was old." He only smiled. "Show me your spring." When they led him to the perfectly still water, he picked up a small stone and dropped it in. Ripples spread across the surface, distorting every reflection. The villagers gasped, their eternal images ruined, but the monk simply sat and waited. The ripples calmed, the reflections returned, but they looked different, more alive, more real. "Your spring was never magical," the monk said softly. "It was only still." But stillness is not life. Life is movement. Change. The ripples that come when experience touches you. Some villagers turned away, but for others, something had shifted. The Buddha's mirror, what happened next, would seem impossible until you know a certain teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha taught that when we look at ourselves, we rarely see what is truly there. We see through layers of memory, of fear, of desire. We see what we think we should look like, what we used to look like, what we are afraid of becoming, but the actual unfiltered presence of the moment, we miss it entirely. It is like trying to see through glass that has been painted over in many colors. Only when we clean away the layers can we see clearly. Mirror meditation B for the monk left. He whispered a simple practice to those who were curious. Look into any reflective surface. Do not judge, do not compare. Do not name what you see as if meeting a human being for the first time. The first to try was a baker, who had avoided mirrors for years. One early morning, she looked into her shop window. She did not flinch, she simply looked. She saw the upturn at the corners of her mouth from greeting customers, the soft strength in her jaw from weathering difficulties, the fine lines etched by decades of laughter. And for the first time in years, she thought, I am beautiful. Not because she looked young, but because she looked real. One by one, others tried the practice. A carpenter noticed the story his calloused hands told. A teacher saw the patience carved into her expression by years of guiding children. They realized the magical spring had been showing them illusions, lifeless images that never grew, but real reflections told stories. Stories of resilience, of love, of awakening. Wabi-sabi, beauty in impermanence. At the edge of the village lived a master potter. Her work had been flawless for decades, but as her hands began to tremble, her pottery changed. Forms became softer, more organic. Glazes bloomed in patterns she could never have planned. At first, she resisted. These pieces did not match her old standard of perfection, but people began to say, these feel alive, like they have souls. She realized her limitations were not flaws, they were collaborators. Her tremor taught her spontaneity, her slower pace taught patience, her aging vision taught her to feel her way to beauty. This is what Zen calls wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. The most treasured tea bowls in Japan are those with cracks mended in gold. Their flaws are not hidden, they are honored. The same is true of a human face. The smooth face of youth is a blank page, but the face that carries the marks of time is a story worth reading. The 3 marks of existence. The Buddha taught that all life shares 3 marks: impermanence, suffering, non-self. This does not make life meaningless, it makes it precious. A sunset moves us because it fades. A flower stirs our hearts because it will not last. And we too become more beautiful as we gather the evidence of having lived. Think of the most beautiful older person you have met. Was it their smooth skin that moved you? Or the kindness in their eyes, the warmth in their voice, the peace in their presence? This is the beauty that time creates, the gift. Beyond the mirror, the villagers eventually left their magical spring, not because they gave up on beauty, but because they had found a deeper one. They saw that their changing faces were not proof of youth lost, but of life courageously lived. And the greatest discovery, that what matters most is not how we appear in the mirror, but how we are in the moments we are given. Your body, this faithful companion, has carried you through every joy and every sorrow. It is not failing you, it is teaching you. And if you listen closely, you may hear it whisper the same truth the woman in the bathroom mirror discovered. Aging is not the end of beauty. Aging is beauty revealed. The temple in the mountains of ancient China, far from the noise of market towns and caravan roads, there stood a temple built over 8 centuries ago. No one knew the names of its original builders, but travelers spoke of it. In whispers, like you might speak of a miracle. The temple had never been renovated, never repainted, never stripped of its age, and yet, with each passing century, it became more beautiful. Its wooden beams had deepened from pale honey to a dark, luminous ebony, polished not by varnish, but by the touch of wind and rain. Its roof tiles wore a patina of green and gold, shifting with the day's light as though the building itself breathed with the sky. The stone steps leading to its entrance had been worn smooth by the feet of countless pilgrims, so smooth that each curve felt as if it had been sculpted for your foot. Alone, moss had claimed the lower walls, creating living tapestries that changed with the seasons. In spring, a bright, almost electric green; in summer, thick and lush; in winter, a deep velvet darkness. The strange thing was this: newer temples in the valley below gleamed with fresh paint and crisp lines, but somehow felt lifeless, cold, as if they were waiting for something they didn't know they had lost. This old mountain temple was different. You could feel it. It wasn't merely standing, it was alive. Collaborative aging when visitors asked why this place radiated such presence. The monks would smile and say, "It is because of collaborative aging, the art of working with time, not against it." The original builders had understood something profound. They had chosen materials that would not resist weathering, but would embrace it. They had designed spaces that would not fight gravity, but would settle into it. They had built something meant to be shaped by wind, rain, sunlight, and snow not protected from them. Master Chen, the temple's eldest monk, often sat with visitors in the main hall. His voice was like the creak of a floorboard that had carried centuries of footsteps. Most people, he would say, build things to stop time. They choose materials that refuse change. They design walls to keep nature out. But we built this temple to dance with time, to move with the elements, not against them. He would gesture toward the darkened pillars. When I was young, every year, they have absorbed more history. They are stronger now than when they were cut, more beautiful than when they were carved. They flex with the wind instead of breaking. They expand and contract with the seasons instead of cracking. This is why they are still here. They have learned the wisdom of aging. Your body is like this temple, what the monks had discovered about wood and stone. Modern science is only beginning to understand about the human body. Your body is not a static object. It is an adaptive, self-renewing temple. Every cell you carry is constantly rebuilding itself. Your immune system grows more intelligent as it learns from past encounters. Your neural pathways deepen with use, creating more efficient networks of thought. Your muscles and bones adapt to how you live, shaping themselves to meet your real needs. But like the temple, the body's wisdom comes not just from accepting change, but from listening to it. When a roof beam sags in the temple, the monks don't panic. They don't force it back into its original shape. They ask, "What is this telling us? Does it need more support here? Less weight there?" They respond with gentle adjustments, never violent interventions. Master Chen explained, "The temple ages with us, not in spite of us. It speaks to us in every change. Our task is not to silence those messages, but to learn their language. If your body could speak, imagine you could sit quietly with your body and hear it speak. What would it say to you? Maybe something like this: 'Thank you for finally listening. For so long, you've been too busy judging my changes to hear what I've been trying to say. Do you remember when you were young and you expected me to do everything instantly? I ran when you demanded speed. I stayed awake when you demanded energy. I adapted to every diet, every workout, every restless night. I kept going, even when you ignored my need for rest. Now, as I slow down, you call it failure. But what if slowing down is how I teach you presence? What if aching joints are how I invite you to move mindfully? What if needing more rest is my way of giving you permission to embrace stillness?' Asterisk, this is not poetic fantasy. It is aligned with what the Buddha taught in the Satipatthana Sutta, that the body is not an obstacle to spiritual life, but one of its greatest teachers. Every wrinkle is a record of your lived emotions. Every shift in muscle or bone is evidence of challenges met and overcome. Every heartbeat, every breath has carried you through decades of joy and loss, creation and care. How can that be called decline? It is a living archive. The monk and the martial artist in a monastery high in the Himalayas. There lived a monk, famous for his strength. Pilgrims came to see him carry stones, chop wood, and work from dawn to dusk without fatigue. But over the years, his pace changed. His movements grew slower, more deliberate. Some visitors, expecting the legendary power of youth, were disappointed. One day, a young martial artist came to challenge him. "I've heard of your strength," the young man said, "but I see age has taken it. Perhaps it's time to step aside." The monk smiled and invited him to carry water to the garden. The young man filled 2 buckets to the brim, lifting them with force and striding quickly. The monk filled his buckets only halfway, moving steadily, balanced. At first, the young man surged ahead, but soon the weight strained his arms, water sloshed out, his legs grew heavy. By the time he reached the garden, half the water was gone, and his energy was spent. The monk arrived minutes later, his buckets still half full, his breath calm. "When I was young," the monk said, "I thought strength meant pushing harder, moving faster, but my body has taught me a different kind of strength, not in force, but in understanding, not in speed, but in sustainability, not in fighting my limits, but working with them." He paused, then added, "The young body is like a river in flood, powerful but scattered. The aging body is like a deep, calm river. Every drop goes where it is needed. Effortless effort. This is what Buddhists call effortless effort, the ability to accomplish more by wasting less. The art of finding the middle path between strain and neglect. With time, your body teaches you how to conserve energy for what matters, most how to move in harmony with gravity instead of against it, how to achieve more with precision than with force. Aging doesn't strip you of strength. It refines it. It teaches the economy of movement, the wisdom of pacing, the mastery of knowing exactly how much and no more to give. Your body's invitation, when you stop fighting your body and start collaborating with it, something changes. You move with less fear. You notice what's possible instead of what's lost. You begin to see every limitation as a new kind of doorway. Your body isn't aging despite you. It's aging with you. Like the temple, it carries the marks of every season, every storm, every celebration, and it becomes more beautiful for it. And if you can listen deeply enough, you may hear it whisper, "Aging is not the loss of youth. Aging is the unveiling of wisdom." The friendship paradox there was once a woman who loved dinner parties more than almost anything else in the world. She wasn't just fond of them, she lived for them. Every month, without fail, she would transform her dining room into a stage. For the small drama of human connection, she would shop early in the morning for ingredients at the farmer's market, lingering over the scent of fresh basil and the blush of ripe tomatoes. She'd come home with her arms full of crusty baguettes, glistening fish on ice, cheeses wrapped in brown paper, and seasonal vegetables still dusted with soil. By afternoon, her home would be filled with the mingled aromas of rosemary, garlic, and caramelizing onions. For more than 15 years, she had been inviting the same group of friends, 8 in total, who had been gathering around her. Table for so long, they called themselves the Circle. Their bond had been tested by the ordinary weather of life moves, breakups, job changes, but had always held. In their private mythology, the Circle was unbreakable. Her dining table was a long oak rectangle that could seat 10 comfortably. It had belonged to her grandmother, who had polished it every Sunday after church until it gleamed like a mirror. For the woman, it was more than furniture. It was a living archive of laughter, stories, and quiet confidences. Each scratch in the wood felt like a memory. Every month she would set it with her grandmother's china, linen napkins, and tall beeswax candles that flickered and reflected in the polished surface. And every month she would wait for her friends to fill those chairs with their laughter, their wine glasses clinking, their conversations spilling over one another like a rushing river dot. But change, like water, always finds a way in. At first, it was subtle. One friend moved across the country for a job opportunity she couldn't refuse. The woman missed her terribly, but told herself the group would manage. Then a couple in the Circle divorced. The air between them at dinners had grown heavy, the pauses brittle, until one month they both simply stopped coming. A third friend's life became consumed with caring for an aging parent. Invitations were met with apologetic texts. "I wish I could, maybe next month." Months became a year. In less than 2 years, the Circle had shrunk from 8 people to 4. The woman adjusted the table, clustering the remaining friends close together so the space wouldn't feel so cavernous. She thought it might help. But instead, The table's emptiness seemed to echo in the silences between them. Conversations that once flowed into the night began to stutter and fade by 10 o'clock. She asked herself hard questions. Had she done something wrong? Had she failed as the glue that held them together? Why couldn't things stay the way they had always been? The remaining friends tried to rekindle the old magic. They spoke often of the missing members, swapping updates like precious heirlooms. They even tried inviting new people, but each newcomer seemed like an extra character in a play that had long since closed. The dinners began to feel less like celebrations and more like memorial services for a friendship that had passed away. One rainy night, after a particularly awkward evening where only 3 chairs had been filled, the woman found herself sitting alone at her grandmother's table. The candles had burned low, the plates sat unwashed. She ran her hands along the smooth oak rain and, without warning, began to weep. She wasn't just losing friends, she was losing her identity as the one who brought people together. That was when her grandmother's voice came back to her, clear as if she were sitting in the next room. This table has seen so many different groups of people. Her grandmother had once said, "When I was young, it was surrounded by siblings and cousins. When I became a mother, it hosted neighbors for potlucks. Later, your grandfather and I gathered book clubs and bridge groups here. And near the end, it was just the 2 of us sharing simple meals and deep talks." The table never changed, but the people always did. And that, her grandmother had concluded, is how I learned the magic was never in keeping the same people forever. The magic was in welcoming whoever needed a seat. The words landed in her chest like a stone sinking into a still pond. She realized she had been trying to preserve the exact arrangement of people, as if life were a photograph instead of a river. In Buddhist thought, all things, friendships included, are impermanent. Trying to keep them fixed is like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The harder you squeeze, the faster it escapes. But with an open palm, water can rest there for a time, reflecting the sky. Slowly, she began to loosen her grip. She stopped counting the chairs before each dinner. She left extra place settings in the cupboard and kept folding chairs stacked nearby, ready for whoever appeared. She invited neighbors she barely knew, colleagues she sensed were lonely, acquaintances navigating rough patches, immediate and startling. New stories appeared at the table. Different perspectives sparked unexpected conversations. The energy felt lighter, freer, unburdened by the expectation of recreating the past, and somewhere in the midst of it, she stopped, feeling abandoned. The friends who had moved on hadn't rejected her. They were simply following their own paths. The Buddhist principle of non-attachment, she came to understand, doesn't mean not loving. It means loving without needing to dictate the shape that love must take. Months later, she hosted her first spring garden party, casual, unplanned, open. People came and went, bringing friends and relatives, drifting in with plates of food and bottles of wine. The air smelled of lilacs. Children chased each other across the grass. To her amazement, nearly all the original circle appeared in some form. The friend from across the country was in town visiting family. The divorced couple came separately, and the awkwardness had dissolved. The caregiver brought her mother, whose stories about her youth enchanted everyone. But the moment that stayed with her happened quietly, when Sarah, one of the original circle, pulled her aside. "I've been avoiding the dinners," Sarah confessed. "I felt like I was disappointing everyone. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. Back then, I was the one with the dating stories and wild adventures. Now, I'm quieter. I want to talk about deeper things. I thought I was letting you down." The woman's heart ached. "Oh, Sarah," she said, "we've all been clinging to old versions of ourselves. Maybe it's time to let those go too." They gathered the others and, for the first time in years, spoke honestly about who they were now and what they needed. Some admitted loneliness, others a desire for new kinds of connection. What emerged was not the resurrection of the old circle, but the birth of something new, a friendship that allowed them to evolve. They began meeting quarterly for what they called evolution conversations, not just to catch up, to explore who they were becoming. 3 years later, the woman began noticing something extraordinary. Even friends she no longer saw were still influencing her in the books she read, the kindnesses she offered, the values she held. Buddhism calls this interdependence, everything connected to everything else. A conversation from years ago can ripple forward through countless lives. No friendship is ever truly gone. It merely changes form. And so she began to live with a quiet certainty. Nothing is ever really lost. The productivity prison break, the view from her corner office stretched across a skyline of glass and steel. From this height, the city seemed orderly, neatly gridded streets, predictable streams of traffic, people hurrying to invisible deadlines. It was, in many ways, a reflection of how she had lived her life: efficient, optimized, meticulously planned. For 30 years, the equation had been simple. The more she accomplished, the more valuable she was as a person. It was a formula that had served her well. At least it had seemed to her. Alarm rang at 5 a.m. and by 5:15 she was answering emails, her coffee cooling beside her, untouched. Breakfast was consumed in front of spreadsheets. Evenings were claimed by strategic planning sessions and networking calls. The occasional glass of wine held over a laptop instead of over conversation. Her life was a checklist, and her sense of self-worth rose and fell with the number of items crossed off. She was the person who could handle anything, solve any problem, outwork anyone. That identity wasn't just a professional strength, was her entire foundation. Cracks in the system began subtly. The 20-hour workdays that had once left her exhilarated started leaving her hollowed out. Problems that had once yielded easily to her sharp, strategic mind now took twice as long to unravel. She noticed her stamina wavering first, in small ways, like needing an extra cup of coffee before her 8 a.m. presentation, then in larger ones, like finding herself unable to recover from a grueling week without an entire weekend in bed. Her solution was instinctive: push harder. She optimized her mornings down to the minute. She re-engineered her email workflow. She read books on high-performance routines, implemented a color-coded task hierarchy, and experimented with biohacks that promised limitless energy. But despite all this, her output kept sliding. Part wasn't the fatigue, it was the creeping fear. For the first time in decades, she was falling behind. The collapse, the breaking point, came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. She was still in the office at 10:47 p.m. Her desk littered with protein, bar wrappers, and cold coffee cups. She had been working 18-hour days just to maintain what used to be her baseline. Her eyes burned from staring at screens. Her fingers ached from typing. When she finally leaned back in her chair, something inside her gave way, not physically, but existentially. If I can't do as much as I used to, who am I? The question landed in her chest like a stone. She realized with quiet horror that she couldn't picture herself without the identity of the one who can do it all. If her productivity faltered, she feared she would cease to matter, not just in the company, but in the world. An unlikely escape desperation can make a person do surprising things. For her, it led to a decision she would never have made in her old mindset. She booked an actual vacation. Not a working holiday, not a conference in disguise, an honest 2-week retreat at a quiet center in the mountains. The contrast was jarring. The staff moved at a different tempo, completing tasks without urgency, yet without delay. Meals were unhurried. People looked each other in the eye when speaking, as if there was nothing more pressing than the conversation at hand. On the third day, restless and skeptical, she struck up a conversation with the retreat's gardener. The grounds were astonishing: flowers, vegetables, old trees draped in moss, and she assumed he must have a flawless management system to keep it all so immaculate. "How do you keep it all looking this beautiful?" she asked. He smiled, leaning lightly on his shovel. "I don't manage it. I just show up each day and do what the garden needs. Some days that's planting, some days it's pruning, some days it's sitting quietly. To grow," she frowned. "But how do you measure your success?" "Success isn't something I achieve," he replied slowly. "It's something I participate in. The garden thrives when I work with its rhythms, not when I force it to meet my deadlines." A shattering perspective, his words unsettled her. She had never considered separating worth from output. The gardener spoke of a Buddhist idea she'd never encountered, that confusing our value as humans with our productivity is one of the root causes of suffering. The Buddha taught that attachment to results to being valued for what we do instead of what we are keeps us caught in endless cycles of anxiety and dissatisfaction. The gardener invited her to walk with him. They stopped before a bed of roses in full bloom beside an oak tree whose branches spread like an umbrella, and near a patch of rich soil where unseen earthworms worked silently. "Which of these is most valuable?" he asked. She began to answer us, maybe, but stopped. Comparing them felt absurd. "The garden doesn't thrive because one plant works harder than another," he said gently. "It thrives because each part offers what it naturally has to give when it can. People work the same way. Some contribute through visible achievements, others by quiet presence. None of it determines their fundamental worth." Her breath caught. She realized she had been living as though her humanity was conditional, as if she had to earn her right to exist through constant activity. What if her worth was simply inherent? Learning to Beatty next morning, she tried something radical. She did nothing measurable. She wandered the garden paths, sat under the oak, watched the sunlight shift across the grass. For the first time in 30 years, she felt neither empty nor restless, just present. When she returned to work, she made changes her old self would have found shocking. She shortened her hours. She delegated. She began saying no to meetings that served no purpose. Her output didn't collapse, improved. She realized much of her so-called productivity had been busy work, activity that filled time without producing real value. But the deeper change was subtler. She was no longer trying to achieve success. She was participating in it. The power of presence. Months later, during a tense meeting between department heads arguing over resources, her old instincts urged her to dominate and drive toward a fast decision. Instead, she stayed silent, listening without rushing to speak. Gradually, the room shifted. People began listening to each other instead of waiting for their turn to argue. By the end, they had reached an agreement and discovered solutions she could never have forced into existence. She understood then what the gardener had meant about effortless action. The Buddhist principle of accomplishing what needs to be done not by forcing outcomes, but by aligning with the natural flow of events. Her value was no longer tied to being the doer. A different kind of wealth crisis months later tested this new perspective. A major client was threatening to leave, and every practical fix seemed to fail. On instinct, she called her retired predecessor for advice. Over coffee, the older woman asked one question: "What are you not seeing?" As they spoke, it became clear the client's frustration wasn't about service, it was about feeling unseen and unimportant. The solution wasn't in contracts or processes, it was in restoring trust. The crisis passed, but the conversation opened her eyes to something else, an economy of wisdom. She began seeking out older colleagues, neighbors, even strangers, people with decades of accumulated experience. Their insights often cut through complexity with quiet clarity. Aging into value, the Buddha described 4 stages of life, the later ones devoted to wisdom and service. For the first time, she imagined aging not as a decline from productivity, but as an evolution toward a kind of value that younger professionals couldn't yet offer: deep perspective, emotional steadiness, long-term vision. This reframed her relationship with time. She no longer feared that every year would chip away at her usefulness. Instead, each one could add to her capacity to see clearly and act wisely. Original nature. Months later, she returned to the retreat. Sitting with the gardener, she said, "I think I understand now. I spent 30 years trying to justify my existence through activity, but my existence doesn't need justification. It just is." He smiled. "That's your original nature. It was here before you started keeping score. It will be here when the score no longer matters." And for the first time, she believed him. The death that brings life. High in the silent mountains of Tibet, there was a village that the outside world could barely find on a map. Winter blanketed its stone homes in white for months at a time, and the thin air made every breath feel like a reminder of both fragility and strength. Yet the most extraordinary thing about this village wasn't its remote beauty or its harmony with nature. It was the way its people began each and every day. Before any fires were lit, before bowls of warm barley porridge were served, before the first prayers were murmured in the monastery on the hill, the villagers began with a single acknowledgement: "Today, I am alive. And someday, I will not be." To outsiders, these words might sound like a morbid mantra, as if the villagers had resigned themselves to gloom. But anyone who stayed long enough discovered something astonishing. These were some of the most joyful, generous, and present human beings you could ever meet. They laughed loudly, loved openly, and met each day with a kind of attentiveness that made you feel the world had slowed down just for them. They had learned something the rest of the world spends immense energy avoiding: how to live in conscious partnership with their own mortality. This was not a village obsessed with death, far from it. It was a community that had discovered a profound paradox: that remembering life will end makes living infinitely more precious. The teacher who changed everything generations earlier. During a bitter winter, when illness swept through the mountains, fear had taken hold. People avoided gathering, convinced that any contact might bring another loss. The air was heavy with worry, and conversations revolved around the same question: who will die next? It was during this fearful season that a wandering Buddhist teacher arrived. He was thin from travel, but had eyes so steady and kind that they seemed to pierce through layers of anxiety. One evening, he stood in the village center and spoke. "You are already dead," he told them. Gasps rose from the crowd. Some thought it was a curse. Mothers clutched their children's hands, but the teacher raised his palm gently. "You are so afraid of dying that you have forgotten to live. You move through your days like ghosts, breathing, walking, eating, but without tasting the gift of being alive. You are haunted not by death itself, but by the fear of it. And in that fear, you are missing life entirely." He introduced them to Maranasati, mindfulness of death, not a grim obsession, but a practice of letting the reality of mortality sharpen awareness of the present moment. When you understand, truly understand, that this day may be your last, he said, you stop wasting it on what does not matter. When you know that those you love are temporary gifts, you look at them with your whole heart. When you accept that nothing lasts forever, you begin to see that everything is already more precious than you can measure. The village transforms at first. The idea frightened the villagers. Why would anyone want to think about death every day? But the teacher stayed through the winter, guiding them gently into the practice. Each morning they sat in silence for a few minutes, breathing in the cold air, and simply acknowledged, "This day is not guaranteed. Everyone I love is temporary. Every experience is unrepeatable." Something unexpected happened. Instead of sinking into sadness, they began to feel lighter. Gratitude welled up in places where anxiety had been. The young noticed the lines in their parents' faces and saw them not as signs of aging, but as maps of laughter, hardship, and love. People began speaking more honestly. listening more fully. Neighbors settled old grudges because life, they realized, was too short to carry them. When the sun rose, it wasn't just light in the sky, it was a rare jewel they had the privilege to see. The elder's wisdom. One village elder became the practice's most passionate advocate. She would tell visitors, "I spent 60 years pretending I would live forever. I postponed joy for the right time, avoided hard conversations because I thought there'd be another chance, and treated ordinary moments like they were nothing special. But when I befriended the truth of my own death, I began living for the first time." She explained that death meditation wasn't about thinking of dying, it was about thinking of living. It asks, if you had 1 year left, 1 month, 1 week, what would you do differently, and why aren't you doing it? Now, in the evenings, families began a new ritual. They would gather around the hearth and share 3 things, something they were grateful for that day, something they wanted to express before it was too late, something they wanted to let go of because life was too short to carry it. Children grew up in a culture where "I love you" was said often and without embarrassment, because tomorrow was never promised. A new way of seeing loss, perhaps. The most remarkable change was in how they faced death when it did arrive. Grief in the village was deep, but it was not destructive. They mourned because they had loved fully without holding back. And because they had been practicing little goodbyes each day, they carried far less regret. This is where the teachings of impermanence began to merge with another truth. Love does not die with the body. Pema's story. Pema had been married to her husband Tenzin for 47 years when he died quietly in his sleep. She grieved deeply. The empty side of the bed was a daily ache. She missed the sound of his humming while he brewed tea, the warmth of his hands, the easy way they shared silence. And yet, as months passed, she discovered something unexpected. She had lost his body, but not his love. The love we shared didn't live in his body or in mine, she told visitors. It lived in the space between us, and that space still exists. Years of Buddhist practice had taught her to see the difference between attachment and love. Attachment says, "I love you, therefore you must never change or leave." Love says, "I love you, therefore I want you to be free, even if that freedom means changing form." She began to notice Tenzin's love in subtle ways, in the patience she showed others because of him, in the acts of kindness she carried out in his style. His love was like water, she said, sometimes ice, sometimes liquid, sometimes vapor, always still water. Legacy without monuments. Word of Pema's wisdom spread, and people came from far away to speak with her. One visitor, a wealthy businessman nearing 60, confessed his fear that his life had not mattered enough. He spoke of wanting to leave monuments, grand charitable works, to secure his memory. Pema asked him to name someone who had most shaped his life. Without hesitation, he named his elementary school teacher, Mrs. Chen, a woman who had no buildings named after her, but whose belief in him had set the course of his entire life. "So," Pema said softly, "her legacy lives in you and in everyone you have encouraged." She needed no monument, just love and presence. The businessmen realized that legacy is not built in the final years of life. It is woven into every choice, every act of kindness, every moment of integrity. The invitation of mortality. Aging, the villagers learned, was not a slow loss, but an accumulation of wisdom, of love, of lives intertwined with your own. The wrinkles on their faces were not signs of decline, but proof of having truly been here. The final teaching was this: you are already leaving a legacy. The only question is, what kind? Every day, with every word and every gesture, you plant seeds. Some will sprout in places you will never see. You may never know whose life was changed because you listened, forgave, encouraged, or simply smiled at the right moment. Mortality is not an enemy. It is the greatest teacher we will ever have if we are willing to listen. And so, in that mountain village, as each morning began with the words, Today, I am alive, and someday, I will not be. It was not a thought of death they carried into their day, but an unshakable reverence for life. The death that brings life high in the wind-carved mountains of Tibet. Far beyond the reach of city lights and noise, there existed a village where something extraordinary happened every single day. The people there began each morning not with coffee, tea, or breakfast, but with a simple, startling acknowledgement. Today, I am alive. Someday, I will not be. To outsiders, this sounded strange, maybe even morbid. But to anyone who spent time among them, it was clear these people were some of the most joyful, grounded, and deeply connected human beings you could ever meet. They had learned something the rest of the world spends enormous energy trying to ignore or push away: how to live in conscious partnership with their own mortality. This was not a village. Obsessed with death, it was a community that had discovered something transformative. When you stop pretending life is endless, every moment becomes precious beyond measure. The teacher who changed everything the practice began many generations ago. During one particularly brutal winter, illness had swept through the valley, and the people were gripped with fear, whispering about who might die next. Families huddled together, anxious and restless, as though worrying might somehow keep death at bay. Then one day, a Buddhist teacher arrived. He stood before them in the cold village square and said something that made the entire crowd gasp: "You are already dead." Some thought he was cursing them. Others grew angry. But he raised his hand for silence and continued, "You are so afraid of dying that you have forgotten to live. You are walking through your days like ghosts, missing the extraordinary gift of being alive because you are terrified of the day that gift will end." The teacher introduced them to a practice called death meditation, not a grim dwelling on endings, but a way of using mortality awareness to wake up fully to life. He explained, when you truly understand that today might be your last, you stop wasting time on petty arguments, grudges, or endless postponements. When you remember that your loved ones are temporary gifts, you listen to them with your whole heart. When you see that no sunrise is guaranteed, you notice the colors in the sky as if they were painted just for you. The practice takes root. The Buddha had called this Maranasati, mindfulness of death, not as a morbid exercise, but as a path to freedom from the suffering caused by denial. The villagers began experimenting with the practice. Each morning, they sat quietly, breathing slowly, and reflecting on three simple truths. This day is not guaranteed. Everyone I love is temporary. Every experience is unrepeatable. Strangely, instead of creating anxiety, this brought a kind of deep peace. Gratitude flourished. When you know your time with someone is limited, you listen differently. You laugh without checking the clock. You speak the words that matter. You stop holding back love for a better moment that may never come. And the villagers discovered something surprising. Awareness of death was not the enemy of happiness, was the doorway to a richer, more vibrant life. The elder's wisdom won. Village elder became the most eloquent advocate for the practice. She would tell visitors, "I spent 60 years pretending I would live forever. I postponed joy. I avoided difficult conversations. I took ordinary moments for granted. But when I finally made peace with the fact that I will die, I began truly living for the first time." She would smile and add, "Death meditation doesn't make you think about dying. It makes you think about living, really living, not just existing." The villagers developed an evening ritual as well. Families would gather and share three things: something they were grateful for that day, something they wanted to express before it was too late, something they wanted to let go of because life was too short to carry it. Children grew up in an atmosphere where love was expressed openly and often. Aging was seen not as a loss, but as an achievement. Wrinkles were proof of years fully lived. Gray hair was a crown earned through experience. When death came, love remained years later, A woman named Pema became the living embodiment of this wisdom. She had been married to her husband, Tenzin, for 47 years when he died quietly. In his sleep one winter morning, Pema grieved deeply. She missed his laugh, his warm hands, the way he hummed while making tea. But as the months passed, something remarkable happened. She realized she had not lost his love at all, she explained. The love we shared didn't live in his body or mine. It lived in the space between Usen, the connection we built. That love is still here. It has changed form, but it has not disappeared. She would compare love to water. It can be ice, liquid, or vapor. The form changes, but it's still water. Tenzin's daily presence had been the liquid. Now it had become the vapor of memory and influence. But it was still the same love. Every act of kindness she offered carried the echo of his gentle nature. Every moment of patience reflected what he had taught her. In this way, his love continued. Moving through the world, using her hands and her heart, the businessman and the legacy word of Pema's wisdom spread, and visitors came from far away. One day, a wealthy businessman arrived, worried he hadn't done enough with his life. He dreamed of building monuments or funding charities to ensure his name would be remembered. Pema listened, then asked, "Tell me about the person who most influenced your life." He spoke of his elementary school teacher, Mrs. Chen, who believed in him when no one else did. She had no monuments, no foundation, yet every success in his life had roots in her encouragement. Pema smiled, so she created a legacy without ever trying to be remembered. Every kindness she gave you, you have given to others. Legacy is not about buildings, it's about the love and integrity you pass along in the moments you are given. The businessman realized he had been creating a legacy all along in the employees he mentored, the friends he supported, the strangers he treated kindly. The invitation of Mortalitaitma taught that the most powerful legacy is not a grand achievement, but the example of how to live with presence, compassion, and courage, especially as we age and approach our own ending. Every day you wake is another opportunity to contribute to the great web of connection that binds all beings across time, space, and even death itself. When we stop fighting the reality of impermanence, we discover that death does not end love, it transforms it. Grief does not mean love is gone. It means love was so real that its absence still echoes. And in that echo, we find both pain and beauty. The villagers understood this truth, and because they lived it daily, their lives were rich beyond measure. And so, the practice continued generation after generation, anchored in the simple, startling reminder spoken each morning. Today, I am alive. Someday, I will not be. Not as a warning, not as a curse, but as an invitation to live fully, love deeply, and leave behind a legacy not carved in stone, but etched in the hearts of those we touch. The infinite beginning, script as our 3 hours together draw to a close. I invite you to take a moment to notice what has shifted within you, not only in the way you think about aging, but in the very ground of your being. Something has been quietly transforming here, not through a sudden epiphany, but like the slow deepening of roots in fertile soil. Reflection on the journey. When you first arrived, you may have carried the weight of cultural messages about aging, that it means decline, loss, the slow dimming of life's light. You may have brought with you your own private fears. Fears about a changing body, about relationships shifting shape, about purpose and meaning in the years ahead. These fears were not wrong. They were not misguided. They were an honest response to living in a world that has forgotten some essential truths about the full span of human life. Moments we shared but together. We walked through a village where people befriended their own mortality. We listened in on the quiet conversation between consciousness and the body that temporarily houses it. We watched the potter, hands trembling with age, shape clay into vessels more beautiful than the ones she had made in her youth. We saw how rivers, like relationships, sometimes rush together in wild rapids, sometimes separate into quiet streams, yet always remain part of the same water. And somewhere along the way, something shifted in you. The recognition the Buddha taught that enlightenment is not the acquisition of something new, but the recognition of what was always already present. What we've explored together is exactly this kind of recognition. You have always been more than your physical form. Though your culture may have taught you to identify completely with your body, you have always been connected to every other being through invisible threads of influence and interdependence. Though you may have felt isolated at times, you have always been quietly accumulating wisdom from every experience, every joy, every heartbreak. Though you may have been taught to measure your worth through productivity or achievement, you have always been both temporary and eternal. Temporary in form, eternal in love and consciousness. In the ripples you create by simply being alive. The deeper truth, these are not consolation prizes for getting older. They are not spiritual bypasses to help you feel better about loss. They are fundamental truths about life itself, and aging does not take you further from them. It brings you closer. Think back to who you were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Was that person more you than you are now? Or have you been becoming more yourself, year by year, less concerned with proving, more concerned with being? Aging, as Revelation Buddhist understanding suggests, that aging is not decline, but revelation. It is the gradual unveiling of who you have always been. Beneath the layers of conditioning, role-playing, and the desperate attempts to control outcomes that so often mark our younger years, every year removes another layer of illusion. Another false belief about what you need to be happy. Another assumption about where your worth comes from. This is why many wisdom traditions speak of elders as being closer to truth. Not because they're closer to death, but because they're closer to clarity. It's happening now, and here's the part many people miss. This revelation doesn't wait for old age. It is happening right now. Every challenge you meet with awareness rather than resistance. Every change you accept with grace rather than fear. Every time you choose presence over distraction, you are walking the path of awakening that aging naturally supports. Practices, we've explored the mirror meditation, revealing beauty beyond the surface. The body dialogue, turning physical change into a teacher. The death meditation, intensifying gratitude for life. The daily recognitions, turning ordinary time into sacred time. These are not coping strategies, they are accelerators, helping you remember your original nature and your timeless essence. Reframing what you once thought was decline might actually be refinement. What you thought was an ending might be the start of something entirely new. What you thought was loss might be liberation. The infinite beginning. The infinite beginning is not a moment in the future. It is available right now in every breath, in every choice, to see with fresh eyes, to act with wisdom, to release the need to be anyone other than who you are. And when you release the exhausting burden of proving your worth, you give the world your greatest gift, the presence of your truest self, the blessing. So, before we part ways, I offer you this blessing passed down for centuries among Buddhist teachers. May you remember in every moment of doubt about your changing body that you are consciousness wearing a temporary form, not form, temporarily experiencing consciousness. May you see your reflection as you would see the sky at sunset. Beautiful, not despite its impermanence, but because of it. May you approach each physical change as wisdom, expressing itself in new ways. May you discover that what the world calls limitation is sometimes an invitation to slow down, to choose carefully, to love deeply. May your relationships flow like rivers, sometimes converging in joyful rapids, sometimes drifting apart, yet always part of the same water. May you love without clinging, grieve without losing hope, and give without expecting return. May you befriend your mortality, not as a shadow, but as a lantern, showing you what truly matters. May you live each day not as one closer to the end, but as one deeper into the mystery of life, may you rest each night in peace, and rise each morning in wonder, closing above all. May you remember, aging is not happening to you, it is revealing you. You are not becoming less. You are becoming truer. You are not moving toward an ending. You are moving toward an infinite beginning that has been here all along, and you are ready. Chapter 1. The Dawn of Awareness. Seeing aging differently. Imagine waking to the soft glow of dawn. The sky, painted in delicate hues of rose and gold, seems neither young nor old, it simply is. The wind whispers through trees whose leaves have long since surrendered to seasons past. In this quiet, you notice yourself, your body, no longer as spry as it once was, carries the subtle marks of time. Your mind, rich with memory, is a library of joys, sorrows, and lessons learned. Aging has arrived not as a thief or a punishment, but as an undeniable companion. And yet, within us, there remains a subtle tension, a fear of time, of loss, of the inevitable march toward death. Zen Buddhism, in its serene and piercing simplicity, offers a way to see aging not as decline, but as a profound unfolding transformation. From fear into wisdom, from resistance into beauty. Part 1. The cultural fear of aging in many cultures. Aging is often treated as a shadow, something to be postponed, hidden, or denied. Wrinkles are masked, gray hair dyed, and every sign of slowing down is treated as an enemy. We live in a society obsessed with youthfulness, where vitality is equated with worth, and the elderly are frequently rendered invisible. Zen teachings invite us to pause and question these assumptions. Why do we fear aging? What is it in the passage of time that unsettles us so deeply? In Zen, the practice of zazen sitting meditation encourages the direct observation of reality without judgment. When applied to aging, zazen allows us to witness the changes in our body, mind, and spirit with clarity and acceptance. We begin to see that aging is not a disease or a loss, but a natural expression of life's impermanence. Impermanence, or anicca in Buddhist terms, is not a threat. It is a truth to be embraced. Each wrinkle, each gray strand, is a marker of lived experience, a badge of consciousness having moved through time. When we observe impermanence without clinging, fear loses its grip, making space for a deep appreciation. Of the present, Part 2. The Zen perspective on body and mind. Zen emphasizes the unity of body and mind. Aging manifests in both, but rather than perceiving it as deterioration, Zen teaches us to observe it as transformation. The body becomes a vessel of accumulated wisdom, each ache or stiffness a reminder that we are alive, that life has been lived with engagement and intensity. In the Heart Sutra, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara declares, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." While abstract, this principle can guide our relationship with aging. The form of our bodies will inevitably change. Skin sags, joints creak, senses dull, but the essence of who we are, our awareness, remains. Our identity is not bound by the ephemeral state of our flesh. It is anchored in consciousness itself. By recognizing this, we learn to appreciate the subtle beauty of transformation. Even as our bodies shift and evolve, mind, too, changes with age. Memory may falter, attention may wander, yet wisdom often deepens. Zen practitioners cultivate a mind that is present, patient, and observant. In aging, this presence becomes a tool of liberation. We learn to witness our thoughts and emotions. Without attachment, the anxieties that once plagued what-ifs about decline or death can dissolve into simple awareness, a realization that life at every stage is complete in its impermanence. Part 3. Transforming fear into awareness. Fear of aging is fundamentally fear of the unknown, the ultimate unknown being death. Zen addresses this fear not by denying death, but by intimately understanding it. The practice of mindfulness, a cornerstone of Zen, teaches us to inhabit our bodies and minds fully. When we sit quietly, observing breath, sensations, and thoughts, we confront impermanence directly. This confrontation is not morbid, it is illuminating. By seeing aging and mortality clearly, we cultivate what the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh calls non-fearful awareness. Each moment becomes an opportunity to witness life fully rather than resist its passage. The body may weaken, but the capacity to observe, to love, to engage with the present expands. Fear transforms into a subtle curiosity, a wonder at the mystery of living, even in decline. Consider the metaphor of autumn leaves. At first, they cling desperately to branches, resisting the inevitable fall. But when they accept the cycle, they release gracefully, revealing colors and textures of exquisite beauty. So too can we approach our own aging with awareness, acceptance, and appreciation. Zen teaches that each stage of life has its own aesthetic and rhythm, waiting to be discovered. Part 4. Mindful Practices for Embracing Aging. Practical Zen exercises can help us transform fear into wisdom. The following practices are particularly powerful. Zazen seated meditation. Sit with a straight spine, eyes softly open or closed, and breathe naturally. Observe the body's sensations, thoughts, and emotions. Notice aging without judgment. When fear arises, label it. Fear is present, then return to the breath. Walking meditation. Walk slowly, feeling each footstep as it touches the earth. Each step is a reminder of presence. Walking meditation fosters a deep appreciation of the body in motion, even as it ages. Gratitude reflection. Each day, reflect on aspects of your body and mind you appreciate. Perhaps it is your hands that have nurtured others, your mind that has solved challenges, your heart that has loved. Gratitude softens fear and cultivates joy. Contemplation of impermanence. Reflect on the transient nature of all things, people, possessions, health, and even life itself. Rather than depressing, this practice often sparks a profound sense of freedom and clarity. Part 5. Aging as a path to wisdom and beauty. As we embrace aging through the lens of Zen, a subtle alchemy occurs. Fear and resistance give way to clarity. And acceptance, the wrinkles, gray hairs, and slower movements are no longer marks of decay, but of a life fully experienced. Wisdom arises not from avoiding time, but from leaning into it with awareness. Beauty, too, transforms. No longer confined to youthful appearances, beauty becomes a radiance of consciousness, the serenity that comes from acceptance, the kindness that arises from experience, the depth of presence that cannot be rushed or manufactured. Aging, seen through Zen eyes, is a profound art form, a dance between impermanence and awareness. The Zen monk Shunryu Suzuki once said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's, there are few." Aging, in many ways, invites us to return to a beginner's mind, to see the world freshly, to approach life with curiosity, humility, and openness. Each stage of life, no matter how advanced, is a chance to witness, to learn, to be fully alive. The dawn of awareness is not simply about recognizing that time passes, it is about seeing differently. Aging is not a curse, but a teacher, a guide leading us toward acceptance, wisdom, and profound beauty. Each line on the face, each ache in the body, each fleeting thought is a reminder of the impermanent, miraculous nature of life. We transform fear into insight, dread into gratitude, and aging into an opportunity for awakening. The world does not fade with age. Our perception deepens. Our senses, once tuned to the superficial, attune to subtler currents, the whisper of the wind, the warmth of sunlight, the quiet depth of the mind. In this light, aging is no longer something to dread. It is an art, a practice, a doorway to seeing life as it truly is: impermanent, transient, and yet endlessly luminous. Chapter 2: The Mirror of Self, Identity and Transformation. Elderly Zen teacher rises before a simple, unadorned mirror. The room is quiet, the air thick with the stillness of dawn. As he gazes, his reflection meets him with a mixture of familiarity and strangeness. The face that looks back is worn, lined with the passage of years, yet illuminated by a profound calm. Gaze, but also the wisdom earned through countless days of practice, meditation, and the intimate confrontation with impermanence. Each line on his face is not merely a mark of aging. It is a record of living, of moments fully experienced. In Zen, mirrors are more than tools for grooming. They are gateways to self. They reflect what we carry within, not just the physical form, but the mind and spirit behind the eyes, that observes the passage of time without clinging. Part 1: The Illusion of Fixed Identity. Youth, strength, ambition, appearance, these become the scaffolding of our identity. Aging disrupts this scaffolding. Hair grays, muscles weaken, skin folds, memory shifts. The familiar image in the mirror begins to feel alien. Anxiety arises. Who am I if I am not the person I once was? Zen Buddhism addresses this dilemma with the profound teaching of Unetta, or no self. The Buddha observed that clinging to a fixed notion of self causes suffering. Our identity is not a permanent entity, but a fluid constellation of experiences, thoughts, emotions, and memories. It is a river, ever-changing, never the same from one moment to the next. The mirror, then, it is a teacher. It shows us impermanence in a way that is immediate and undeniable. When we look deeply, we begin to see that the self we fear losing is never truly ours to begin with. It is a collection of fleeting forms, like clouds drifting across the sky. Part 2: Aging as a Gateway to Transformation. Aging, when approached with awareness, becomes a profound opportunity for transformation. The external changes of the body mirror the inner changes of the mind. Each wrinkle, each gray hair, each tremor is a signpost, inviting us to examine what we cling to and what can be released. The Zen teacher in the mirror realizes that the fear of losing youth is the fear of attachment itself. To release this attachment is not to become indifferent to life, but to deepen presence. The older we grow, the more we recognize the futility of resisting change. Our energy is no longer best spent chasing permanence. It is best spent cultivating awareness, compassion, and understanding. Aging teaches humility. Come memories, relationships, lessons learned, and the quiet joy of simply existing. Zen practice illuminates this paradox: loss and gain, fear and joy, impermanence and awakening, all coexisting in each moment. Part 3: The mirror as a meditation tool. Zen practice offers a simple yet powerful exercise: gazing into the mirror. With full presence, unlike the hurried glance before a morning routine, this practice is deliberate. Sit or stand before a mirror in quietude. Breathe naturally. Let your eyes settle on your reflection, not with critique, but with open awareness. Observe every line, every expression, the curve of your mouth, the light in your eyes. Notice the subtleties that often go unnoticed, the way your face carries joy, sorrow, and the quiet accumulation of time. As you observe, recognize the impermanent nature of what you see. The reflection is neither permanent nor fixed. It is a momentary form, a fleeting expression of life itself. Behind the reflection, behind the features, there is the observer awareness itself, which remains unchanged, untouched by age, untouched by time. Through this practice, the mirror becomes a teacher of truth. It helps us disentangle identity from appearance. The lines of aging are no longer marks of fear. They are reminders of lived experience. The eyes that once sparkled with youthful ambition now glow with insight. The body, though slower, carries a lifetime of lessons. Part 4: Self-compassion and acceptance. Aging invites not only awareness, but also compassion toward oneself. It is natural to feel loss, nostalgia, or regret. Zen encourages us to meet these feelings with kindness rather than judgment. Self-compassion is the recognition that all beings age, suffer, and face impermanence. To resist this is to resist the flow of life itself. When we look into the mirror with compassion, we begin to integrate our outer and inner selves. We see that identity is not a fixed facade, but a dynamic interplay of body, mind, and spirit. Our true self is not defined by the absence of wrinkles or the vigor of youth. It is the awareness that observes life fully, the capacity to witness, to learn, to love. Body that has slowed, has carried countless experiences, and continues to serve as a vessel for consciousness. Every imperfection becomes a testament to living. Every change a path to liberation. Part 5. Integration with daily life. The mirror meditation need not be limited to formal practice. Zen encourages mindfulness in every action. Aging provides countless opportunities to observe self-identity in real time. Each morning, as you brush your teeth or wash your face, let the mirror remind you. The reflection is not who you are, it is only a form, a passing manifestation. In conversations, notice the stories you tell about yourself. Are they clinging to youth, strength, or certainty? Aging challenges us to speak less from attachment and more from awareness. In every interaction, we can bring a Zen attitude, openness, presence, and the humility of knowing that all forms are transient. Walking outdoors, touching the earth, listening to the wind, or watching the sun, set these moments reveal the impermanent nature of all forms. Aging simply makes the truth more vivid. Our reflection, like the world around us, is impermanent, fleeting, and yet infinitely meaningful. Part 6. Transformation beyond the self. Zen teaches that true transformation occurs when we see beyond the boundaries of self. The reflection in the mirror is not merely a private experience. It is a portal to understanding our interconnectedness with all life. Just as the face ages, so do mountains erode, rivers change course, and seasons shift. Life itself is a mirror of impermanence, and our personal transformation mirrors the universal dance of existence. As we release attachment to a fixed identity, compassion naturally expands. The aging self becomes a teacher not only to oneself but to others. Our presence, grounded in awareness, inspires others to embrace their own impermanence. Wisdom emerges when we stop clinging and begin witnessing life's flow with equanimity. In this way, aging is not a decline, but a refinement. It is an invitation to step beyond the superficial distinctions of form and identity into the timeless essence of being. Practice mirror meditation. Breathe naturally and settle your awareness on your reflection. Observe without judgment. Notice every detail, lines, expressions, eyes, posture. Reflect internally. This body has changed, but awareness remains. I am more than this reflection. Your practice over days and weeks. The goal is not perfection, nor is it self-criticism. The mirror becomes a teacher, guiding you toward clarity, compassion, and the realization that identity is fluid, impermanent, and deeply interconnected with the flow of life. The mirror, once a tool for judgment, becomes a gateway to liberation. The lines, the graying hair, the subtle tremors, these are not limitations, they are lessons. Identity is not a fixed shape to be preserved, but a river to be experienced fully. Aging, when embraced with Zen awareness, becomes a profound journey of self-discovery. Is fleeting, yet awareness endures. The self he thought he knew dissolves, revealing the truth beyond form. As a static reflection, but as an ever-changing, luminous, and deeply beautiful unfolding. Chapter 3. Letting go of youth's shadow. Many of us carry shadows from the past. These shadows are cast by the bright, vibrant years of youth, at time when energy surged. The body moved with fluid grace, and life felt boundless. We look back with longing, often comparing our present selves with memories of strength, beauty, and freedom. The mirror shows the changes: hair silvered, muscles less firm, steps slower. And yet, the mind sometimes clings to a vivid recollection of a self that once existed. In Zen, this clinging is recognized as a source of suffering. The Buddha taught that all suffering, or dukkha, arises from attachment and craving. We suffer when we long for what is no longer present, when we resist the inevitability of change, and when we mistake memories for the true self. Aging confronts us with this very truth. The body cannot remain as it once was, and yet the mind frequently attempts to hold on to what it remembers. This tension between past vitality and present reality creates a subtle grief-acquiet shadow that follows us through our days. Part 1. Understanding the nature of attachment. Attachment, in Zen understanding, is the mind's attempt to make impermanent things permanent. Youth, beauty, strength, and speed are fleeting. Clinging to them is like trying to hold water in cupped hands. It slips through, no matter how tightly we grasp. Consider the dancer. Once swift, her body a vessel of grace, leaping and turning with effortless elegance. Now her movements are slower, her limbs heavier. At first, she mourns the lost agility, comparing herself to the vibrant image of youth she remembers. But Zen teaches her a subtle truth. Loss and presence can coexist. When the mind releases its clutch on the past, the dancer discovers a beauty and stillness that she never appreciated before. Every subtle gesture, every gentle sway, becomes a meditation, a manifestation of wisdom born from experience. Letting go does not mean giving up. It is not resignation, nor is it despair. It is an active practice, a conscious choice to make space for what the present moment offers. The vitality of youth is transformed, not destroyed. It becomes insight, depth, and a profound capacity for acceptance. Part 2. The second noble truth and letting go. The Buddha's second noble truth teaches that suffering arises from craving and attachment. We crave the return of youth, the vigor we once enjoyed, the appearance we once possessed. These cravings fuel dissatisfaction with the present, preventing us from fully experiencing life as it is. Zen encourages us to examine these cravings without judgment. The shadows of youth are natural. They emerge from the human mind's desire for continuity and permanence. Observing them with awareness allows us to disentangle from the grip of attachment. We can acknowledge the longing, honor the experiences of our past, and then release the need for them to define us now. By letting go, we discover the freedom of presence. The past does not vanish, remains as memory, but it no longer chains the heart. The present moment, with all its quiet rhythms and subtle joys, becomes the true source of vitality. Part 3. Transformation through letting go. Transformation comes when we allow the shadow of youth to dissolve into acceptance. This process is not instantaneous. It requires patience, practice, and a gentle, non-judgmental awareness of the self. The dancer's journey illustrates this transformation. In her youth, movement was exuberant, full of energy and outward expression. Now, each step carries intention and presence. Every slow movement allows her to notice subtleties she once overlooked: the flex of a finger, the weight shift in a foot, the rhythm of her breath. Where she once sought to dazzle, she now learns to savor. Where she once rushed, she now inhabits time fully. Zen philosophy frames this not as loss, but as gain. Wisdom replaces raw energy. Depth replaces speed. Beauty emerges from experience rather than display. The shadow of youth fades not because it is forgotten, but because its hold on the heart is released. Part 4. Practical exercises for letting go to work with the shadow of youth. We can engage in mindful practices that combine reflection, observation, and release. One such exercise is as follows. Take a quiet space and a piece of paper. Write down all that you miss about your younger years: strength, appearance, opportunities, energy, or even ambitions. Read each item slowly, noticing any emotional charge, longing, regret, or sadness. Acknowledge these feelings without judgment. Take a deep breath, and with each exhale, consciously release attachment to that aspect of the past. Visualize it dissolving like mist, evaporating in the morning sun. Place a hand over your heart and silently affirm, I honor the life I have lived. I release what no longer serves me. I embrace the wisdom of this moment. This practice is not a one-time ritual. It can be repeated daily, gradually training the mind to let go of clinging and open to the present moment. Over time, the shadow of youth no longer casts a heavy presence. Instead, it becomes a gentle echo, reminding us of the life we have lived without binding us to it. Part 5. Finding beauty in the present. Letting go of the past allows us to perceive beauty in the present. The world does not cease to inspire. As our youth fades, in fact, it often becomes more nuanced, more profound. The slower movements, the quiet moments, the lines on a face, the creases in a hand-doll reveal stories of living. The Zen practitioner learns to savor this beauty, not as a comparison to what once was, but as its own intrinsic value. Just as the dancer finds elegance in stillness, the aging mind and body discover a resonance and clarity that youth alone cannot provide. The present moment is filled with textures, subtleties, and insights that are only accessible to the patient and attentive mind. Even simple acts, walking in nature, brewing tea, observing a sunrise, become meditative practices when approached with awareness. Each experience is fully alive, complete in itself, no longer overshadowed by longing for a lost past. Part 6. Integration into daily life. Letting go of youth's shadow is not limited to meditation or reflective exercises. It permeates every aspect of life, physical movement, except the body's current capacity. Modify practices to honor its present state. Move mindfully, appreciating each sensation rather than yearning for past agility. Relationships release expectations shaped by youthful ideals. Embrace people as they are now and relate with compassion and presence. Work and creativity. Focus on the process rather than the achievements of past performance. Wisdom allows creativity to evolve in new forms, unburdened by old standards. Self-perception. Observe internal dialogue about aging and youth. Each thought of, I am not what I used to be, can be met with acknowledgement and gentle release. Integrating these principles, life becomes a continuous practice of acceptance and presence, transforming shadows of the past into pathways for insight and serenity. Part 7. The freedom beyond clinging. Ultimately, letting go of youth's shadow is a liberation. We no longer measure life against memories, ideals, or illusions of permanence. The mind rests in the present, unburdened by attachment, open to the subtle richness of each moment. The Zen practitioner learns that vitality is not confined to physical energy. It is a quality of awareness, attention, and responsiveness to the world. Beauty is not the prerogative of youth. It is the natural expression of lived experience, clarity, and presence. The shadow of youth, once a source of grief, becomes a teacher. It shows where attachment existed, illuminates the impermanent nature of form, and invites the mind to expand into freedom. With each release, we step closer to a life unbound. A life fully lived in the unfolding present practice, written reflection. And release. Write down what you miss about your younger years. Read each item slowly, acknowledging its significance. With each exhale, consciously release your attachment to it. Affirm to yourself, I honor what was, I release it. I live fully now. Close the exercise with a few minutes of mindful breathing, letting the mind settle in the richness of the present moment. The dancer, the mirror, the memories, they all point to the same Zen truth. Clinging to what is no longer present is the root of suffering. Letting go is not surrender. It is transformation. As we release the shadow of youth, we awaken to the beauty, wisdom, and vitality of the now. Aging, then, is not a decline, but a journey of deepening awareness. Every memory of the past becomes a teacher, every line of the body a mark of lived experience, and every breath an invitation to presence. The shadow fades, and what remains is clarity, peace, and the luminous beauty of life fully embraced. Chapter 4: Wrinkles as Calligraphy. In a quiet room suffused with soft, natural light, a Zen calligrapher sits before her workspace. The brushes rest in their holders, the inkstone gleams, and the paper awaits the first stroke. Her eyes drift downward to her hands. She observes the lines etched across her palms and the fine creases spreading across her face. Each wrinkle tells a story of laughter, sorrow, persistence, and insight. Each mark is a record of living, an imprint of a life fully engaged with the world. In this moment, she does not see imperfection. She sees the poetry of existence. These lines, these traces of time, are her own unique calligraphy. The Japanese aesthetic of wabi-sabi teaches that imperfection is not to be hidden but celebrated, that transience is not tragic but sacred, and that incompleteness is not flawed but beautiful. Aging, often feared in our culture, is thus reframed in Zen as a process of transformation. Every wrinkle, every crease, every line is like a brushstroke on the canvas of life. They record experiences, lessons, losses, joys, and the subtle wisdom accumulated over decades. When we learn to perceive ourselves in this light, we see that life itself has been a practice in arta, continuous act of creation. Part 1: Seeing life as art. Consider a traditional Japanese scroll painting. The brushstrokes are not always perfectly even. The ink bleeds slightly, the lines curve unpredictably, and the composition may seem asymmetrical, yet the result is not flawed. It is complete, resonant, and alive. Each stroke contributes to the harmony of the whole, telling a story that is both intentional and spontaneous. In the same way, the human body and face reflect the artistry of life. Wrinkles are not mistakes or defects. They are expressions of movement, emotion, and thought. The crow's feet at the corners of the eyes tell of smiles shared across decades. The furrows on the brow speak of concern and contemplation, showing a life that is cared deeply. The lines around the mouth map out conversations, laughter, and moments of connection. Each is an individual brushstroke in the unique artwork of self. Zen teaches us to shift our perspective from judgment to observation. Instead of seeing wrinkles as signs of decay or loss, we can perceive them as traces of meaning. They are evidence that we have lived, that we have felt, and that we have engaged with the unfolding mystery of existence. Part 2: The Philosophy of Wabi-Sabi. The philosophy of wabi-sabi provides a lens through which aging can be celebrated. Rather than mourned, wabi-sabi values the natural, the weathered, the imperfect, and the transient. It is an aesthetic that honors life in its raw, authentic state, emphasizing depth, simplicity, and impermanence. Wrinkles in this context are not signs of fragility, but symbols of endurance. They are the subtle narrative of time past, of resilience in the face of hardship, of joy amidst the mundane. Just as a tea bowl may bear the crack of its kill, adding character and uniqueness, the human face and hands reveal their history. With grace, this philosophy encourages us to notice beauty in imperfection, not in spite of it, but because of it. Every line, every crease, every fold is part of the harmony of our being, contributing to the intricate calligraphy of a life well lived. Part 3: Mindful Observation. As practice, aging can become a meditative practice by observing our own features. With attentive presence, we cultivate appreciation rather than criticism. Begin by gazing at your hands or face in a quiet moment. Notice the wrinkles, the textures, the shadows, and highlights. See each line as a stroke in a unique artwork, Allow yourself to acknowledge the moments behind each mark, times of joy, grief, challenge, or triumph. This mindful observation is an act of acceptance. It is a recognition that life, in all its transience, is worthy of attention and gratitude. The Zen calligrapher does not erase mistakes. She integrates them into the flow of her brushwork. In the same way, we do not hide or resent our wrinkles. We honor them as evidence of living, learning, and becoming. Part 4. Integrating aging into daily life beyond observation. We can bring the philosophy of wabi-sabi and the artistry of aging into daily practice. One accessible method is through a simple tea ceremony, an act that embodies mindfulness, intention, and reverence for the present moment. Prepare your space. Find a quiet area where you will not be disturbed. Place a cup, a kettle, and a spoon in front of you. Pour the water slowly. Notice the motion of your hands, the sound of the water, the rising steam. Reflect on imperfection. Observe the cup. Perhaps it has tiny chips or asymmetries. See them as part of its beauty, not flaws. Connect with your own lines. Gently place your hands over your cup. Reflect on the wrinkles of your hands and face. Let each line remind you of a memory, a lesson, a lived moment. Drink mindfully. Take each sip with awareness, fully appreciating the warmth, taste, and texture. Each sensation is part of the present, complete and alive. Through this ritual, the impermanence and uniqueness of both object and self are celebrated. The ceremony is not only about tea, it is about recognition, acknowledging the artistry of life and the elegance of aging. Part 5. Embracing the beauty of transience. Transience, a central concept in both Zen and wabi-sabi, reminds us that nothing remains static. Our bodies change, the world changes, and all moments pass. Wrinkles, like the lines in a painting, are impermanent yet meaningful. They teach us to appreciate the present, to see life as a flowing composition rather than a static ideal. By embracing this transience, we cultivate gratitude. Each mark on our body is a testament to survival, growth, and engagement. The softness in the face, the subtle sag of skin, the texture of handsies are not deficits, but signatures of experience. They embody lessons, stories, and emotions that define the richness of life. When we align with this perspective, we no longer resist the passing of time. We allow ourselves to age gracefully with curiosity, presence, and reverence. Wrinkles become a languagey form of calligraphy that communicates the depth and texture of our personal journey. Part 6. Exercises for celebrating wrinkles. Visual meditation. Sit in front of a mirror. Observe each line on your face and hands. For each wrinkle, recall a memory or lesson associated with it. Whisper gratitude for the experience it represents. Journaling. Write down the stories behind your wrinkles. Include moments of joy, sorrow, discovery, and connection. Reflect on how these experiences have shaped your character and wisdom. Artistic expression. Take a brush, an ink, or a pencil. Trace the lines of your hands or face on paper as a form of visual meditation. Recognize the uniqueness of your calligraphy. Mindful daily actions. Incorporate attention to detail and appreciation into routine tasks, whether folding laundry, watering plants, or pouring tea. Notice imperfection and beauty in yourself and your environment. Through these practices, the act of aging transforms from something to resist into something to honor. Each day, each line, each movement becomes an opportunity to engage with the artistry of life. Part 7. Aging as a living masterpiece. Consider the human life as a scroll unfurling over decades. Each chapter, each experience, each challenge, and each joy contributes to the brushwork. Wrinkles are not erasures, they are additions, enhancing the depth, contrast, and harmony of the whole. The Zen calligrapher's hands teach us that impermanence, change, and imperfection are not obstacles but sources of wisdom and beauty. By embracing our own calligraphy, we shift from a mindset of loss to one of appreciation. Life becomes a continuous creation, where every mark matters, every moment resonates, and every breath contributes to the evolving masterpiece of self. Aging, then, is not decline. It is a refinement of the art of living. Each wrinkle, each line, each curve becomes a stroke in a larger composition. One that is uniquely yours, one that celebrates imperfection, transience, and the enduring beauty of being fully present. Practice. Tea ceremony reflection. Set up a simple tea ritual in a quiet space. Slowly pour the water, noticing the motions of your hands. Observe your cup, seeing beauty in its imperfection. Reflect on your own lines and wrinkles, acknowledging the stories they hold. Drink mindfully, letting each sip embody appreciation for impermanence, beauty, and life fully lived. Wrinkles are not to be hidden or feared. They are the calligraphy of existence, recording our journey through time. Each line, crease, and fold tells a story of laughter, tears, discovery, and endurance. In the practice of Zen, we learn to perceive these marks not as evidence of loss, but as affirmations of life's richness. Through mindfulness, wabi-sabi, and simple daily rituals, aging becomes an art form. We no longer strive to erase or deny our wrinkles. We celebrate them, integrate them, and allow them to speak. Life, like a calligrapher's scroll, is a continuous, evolving masterpiece, one stroke at a time, one moment at a time. Aging is not the end of beauty. It is the unveiling of a deeper, subtler, and infinitely richer form of it. Each wrinkle is a poem, each crease a note in the music of existence, each line a brushstroke in the artwork of your life. Chapter 5. The Body as Temple, the quiet sanctuary of a Zen monastery. The morning light filters softly through the shoshi screens. A monk kneels on a woven mat, his hands pressed gently against his knees. He moves slowly, mindfully, tending to each joint, each muscle with deliberate attention. The ache in his knees is not a nuisance to be ignored. It is a teacher, a guide to presence and acceptance. In Zen, the body is revered as a temple. It is a vessel through which we experience life, a home for consciousness, and a vehicle for compassion. Just as a temple gate protects the sacred interior, our body houses the sacredness of being. Honoring it does not mean denying its limitations or striving for perfection. It means acknowledging its needs, observing its sensations, and nurturing it with awareness and gratitude. The body, especially in the later years, changes. Stiffness, fatigue, and aches may arise. These shifts are not curses, but invitations to deepen our awareness. They remind us that life is impermanent and that our existence is rooted in the present moment. Part 1. The body, in Zen philosophy, Zen practice, emphasizes embodiment. The body is not separate from the mind. It is the medium through which awareness unfolds. The Buddha taught that mindfulness begins with the body. Each breath, each posture, each sensation can be an anchor to the present, a bridge between internal awareness and the world outside, a form of meditation that fully embodies this principle. In Shikantaza, there is no striving, no manipulation of the mind, no pursuit of a goal. One simply sits, fully inhabiting the body, observing the sensations of weight, warmth, tension, and release. Every subtle shift, every minor ache or ease, becomes part of the meditation. Through such mindful presence, we come to recognize the body not as an obstacle to enlightenment, but as an essential partner in it. Aging, then, becomes an opportunity to deepen this partnership. The stiffness in the joints is a reminder to move slowly and consciously. The aches and fatigue become guides for self-care and reverence. Part 2. Respecting limitations in our culture. Aging is often framed as a decline, a list of losses, or a series of limitations to be mourned. Zen offers a different perspective. Rather than resisting the changes of the body, we observe them with gentle acceptance. The aches in our knees, the tension in our shoulders, or the fatigue in our back are not enemies. They are signals informing us of our boundaries and prompting us to slow down. Resistance brings suffering. Acceptance brings clarity and peace. Consider the analogy of a temple. A temple is not less sacred because its stones crack with time, or its wooden beams weather in the wind. Its value is in its presence, its purpose, and the care with which it is maintained. Similarly, the aging body, with its imperfections and limitations, remains sacred. Honoring it through mindful attention, gentle movement, and compassionate care is an expression of reverence for life itself. Part 3. Mindful Embodiment. Mindful embodiment invites us to inhabit the body fully. This begins with awareness of sensations. Lie down or sit comfortably in a quiet space. Begin by closing your eyes and taking a few deep, conscious breaths. Feel the rise and fall of the chest, the subtle movement of the abdomen, and the shifting of weight in contact with the floor or chair. Slowly, bring attention to each part of your body, head and face. Notice tension in the jaw, forehead, or around the eyes. Breathe into these areas, softening muscles and releasing tightness. Neck and shoulders. Observe stiffness or tightness. Allow your shoulders to drop naturally, releasing any weight held unconsciously. Arms and hands, feel the energy flowing through the limbs. Observe warmth, tingling, or heaviness without judgment. Torso. Notice the rise and fall of your breath. Sense the rhythm of your heart, the subtle expansion of your ribs, and the flow of life within. Hips and legs. Attend to tension or discomfort. Acknowledge the support these parts provide and offer gratitude for movement. Feet and toes. Sense contact with the floor or mat. Feel rootedness and connection with the earth as you scan the body. Observe sensations neutrally. Avoid labeling them as good or bad. Simply note what arises. Honor the body as a faithful companion, witnessing every stage of life. Part 4. Breath as an anchor. Breath is a bridge between body and mind. In the practice of mindful embodiment, attention to breath deepens awareness and calms the nervous system. Each inhale brings vitality. Each exhale releases tension. Place one hand gently on your abdomen. Feel the rise and fall of each breath. Let the mind rest in the rhythm, noticing how the body responds. As stiffness or discomfort arises, breathe into it. Imagine warmth and openness flowing to the area. Recognize the body's signals not as obstacles, but as invitations to presence. Breath. We honor the temple within. We acknowledge the interplay of strength and fragility, resilience and vulnerability, wisdom and impermanence. Part 5. Movement as meditation. Mindful movement is another form of reverence. Gentle stretching, yoga, or slow walking can transform ordinary bodily experience into meditation. As we age, these practices become especially important not to achieve flexibility or strength alone, but to cultivate awareness and gratitude. For example, when walking slowly, notice the shifting of weight from heel to toe. Observe the muscles engaged, the balance required, the connection with the ground. When stretching, feel the extension of joints and the release of tension. Each movement is an expression of mindfulness, a dialogue between body and mind, a celebration of the living temple. Clothes, carrying a cup of tea can be performed with mindful attention. The body becomes a sacred instrument, capable of expressing presence, care, and intention in every gesture. Part 6. Aging and compassion for the body. As the body ages, compassion becomes essential. We may notice limitations, discomfort, or declining strength. Rather than resisting or resenting these changes, Zen encourages gentle acceptance. Compassion for the self is as important as compassion for others. Treat the body as a guest in your home rather than a burden. Nourish it with food, rest, movement, and kindness. Listen to its needs, respond to discomfort with care, and celebrate its capacities. By embracing these practices, we transform fear of aging into gratitude, stiffness into awareness, and limitation into opportunity. The body is more than a vessel. It is a teacher. Every ache and twinge reminds us of impermanence, of the value of presence, and of the sacredness inherent in each moment. By tending to the body mindfully, we cultivate resilience, wisdom, and a deeper appreciation for life. Part 7. Practice body scan and reverence. Find a quiet space. Sit or lie down comfortably. Close your eyes and take several deep, conscious breaths. Slowly scan your body from head to toe. Observe sensations without judgment. Where you feel tension or discomfort, breathe gently into the area. Imagine warmth, relaxation, and openness. Acknowledge each part of your body, offering gratitude for its presence, its capabilities, and its endurance. When finished, place your hands over your heart and take 3 slow breaths, honoring the temple that is your body. This practice, repeated daily or as needed, fosters deep awareness, acceptance, and reverence. Over time, it transforms the relationship with the body from one of frustration or neglect to one of partnership, care, and celebration. Mindful embodiment is not limited to formal meditation. It can infuse all aspects of life. Eating, savor each bite, noticing flavors, textures, and nourishment. Movement, walk, stretch, or perform daily tasks with full attention. Rest, sleep without guilt, honoring the body's need for renewal. Pain and discomfort, observe sensations with curiosity and compassion. Let them teach patience and awareness. Aging, recognize that change is natural. Embrace limitations without fear, and celebrate the wisdom that comes with each stage of life. Through these practices, the body becomes not merely a vessel, but a sanctuary, a temple in which mindfulness, compassion, and presence can flourish. Aging brings aches, stiffness, and changes that cannot be denied. Yet these very shifts invite us into deeper awareness, greater presence, and profound reverence. The body, in all its imperfection, becomes a living temple, a site of meditation, wisdom, and grace. By cultivating mindful embodiment, honoring limitations, and practicing compassionate care, we transform the experience of aging from struggle into sanctuary. The body is our faithful companion, a sacred vessel through which life unfolds. It is the home of awareness, the instrument of compassionate action, and the gateway to a profound embodied presence as the Zen monk tends his knees with care. So, to do we honor our own bodies, recognizing that in the temple of the self, every sensation, every ache, and every breath is holy. Aging is not a decline. It is an invitation to inhabit our bodies fully, to treasure the wisdom of each moment, and to celebrate the temple that is uniquely our own. Chapter 6. Fear as a Dharma Gate opening scene. The novice and the master. The sun has just risen over a mist-laden Zen monastery. A novice, trembling slightly, approaches his master. His voice is hesitant, yet full of the raw weight of human vulnerability. "Master, I am afraid. I do not know how to face it." The master, seated cross-legged on a simple wooden platform, regards the novice with calm eyes. After a moment of silence, he replies gently, "Good. The gate is open." This single phrase embodies a profound teaching. In Zen, fear is not an enemy to be suppressed, denied, or overcome through force of will. It is a doorway, a Dharma gate, a threshold through which we enter the deeper dimensions of awareness and freedom. The novice, terrified by the prospect of mortality, is invited not to flee from fear. In this encounter, fear itself becomes the teacher. Part 1. Understanding fear. In Zen, fear is a natural aspect of the human condition. It arises when the mind anticipates harm, loss, or death. In the context of aging, fear often manifests as anxiety over diminishing abilities, loss of independence, or the approach of the inevitable end. Zen teachings, however, suggest a radical fear is a form of energy, a signal, a mirror reflecting the mind's attachment to self, permanence, and control. When observed with mindful attention, fear loses its tyrannical power and becomes a doorway into insight. Mara, the personification of fear in Buddhist texts, is not an adversary. He is a guide, pointing to the areas where the mind clings, where illusions of control or permanence take hold. By embracing fear without judgment, we discover clarity, courage, and freedom. Part 2. The mechanism of fear. To understand fear, consider its anatomy. Fear arises when the mind projects into the future, imagining outcomes that may or may not occur. The body reacts with tension, the heart accelerates, and the mind spirals through scenarios of loss and limitation. In aging, this projection often manifests as anxiety about declining health concern over dependence on others, fear of isolation or loneliness, apprehension about mortality. Each of these fears, while natural, is rooted in attachment, the clinging to identity, youth, or permanence. Zen teaches that attachment is the source of suffering. When we cling to what is impermanent, fear naturally arises. Observation is the key. By witnessing fear directly, without judgment or resistance, we reveal its impermanent nature. Like clouds passing across a vast sky, fears appear, shift, and dissolve. The essence of the mind remains untouched. Part 3. Fear as a Dharma gate. A Dharma gate is a threshold leading to awakening. Fear, when approached with mindfulness, becomes such a gate. It invites us to recognize impermanence. Fear arises because the mind seeks permanence in an impermanent world. Aging and death remind us that all forms, including our bodies, relationships, and even thoughts, are transient. By acknowledging impermanence, we cultivate presence. Observe without reaction. Mindful attention allows us to see fear clearly, without being swept away by it. Observation itself transforms fear from a tyrant into a teacher. Develop courage and clarity. Facing fear directly strengthens resilience. It fosters a compassionate understanding of self and others, deepening wisdom and equanimity. In Zen literature, the great teachers often spoke of fear as a doorway rather than an obstacle. When the novice confesses, "I am afraid," the master does not scold or dismiss him. Instead, he affirms the moment. "Good, the gate is open." The presence of fear signifies an opportunity for awakening. Part 4. Practicing mindful fear. The practice of observing fear begins with stillness and presence. Here is a step-by-step guide to transform fear into insight. Sit quietly, find a comfortable seated position, either on a cushion or chair. Keep the back straight, hands resting gently in your lap, and eyes softly closed. Bring fear into awareness. Recall a fear related to aging, mortality, or the passage of time. Name it silently. For example, "I am afraid of losing my independence," or "I fear death." Observe the sensations. Notice how the fear manifests in the body. Does the chest tighten? Does the stomach feel knotted? Are the shoulders tense? Observe without trying to change anything. Breathe into it. Inhale deeply, inviting awareness to the area of tension. Exhale slowly, imagining openness and relaxation. Allow fear to exist without resistance. Label and release. Silently acknowledge the impermanent nature of fear. This fear is present now. It will change. It does not define me. Notice how naming and observing reduce the intensity of the emotion. Rest in clarity. Return attention to the breath. Feel the body sitting, alive and aware. Recognize that observing fear transforms it into clarity and courage. Part 5. Stories of fear transformed. Consider the story of an elderly Zen practitioner who feared losing her memory. She worried that as cognition declined, her identity would dissolve. Instead of fleeing from this fear, she began a practice of mindful observation. Each day, she sat quietly, naming the fear, noticing its bodily effects, and breathing into it. Over time, the fear softened. She began to see memory not as a fortress of identity, but as a flowing river. Even as details faded, her awareness and presence deepened. The fear became a teacher, guiding her into acceptance, clarity, and peace. Another story is of a monk confronting his own mortality. Faced with terminal illness, he initially resisted, clinging to life with anxiety and dread. Through daily mindfulness, he observed each wave of fear as it arose. He did not fight it, did not suppress it, but welcomed it as a messenger. In doing so, he discovered a profound serenity, a direct experience of impermanence, and the liberation that comes when fear is transformed into wisdom. Part 6. Integrating fear into daily life. Mindful engagement with fear is not limited to meditation sessions. It can permeate daily life. Walking, notice fear arising in thoughts or sensations. Observe it without judgment. Conversations, recognize fear when it surfaces in relationships or social settings. Health challenges, observe anxiety. About aging or illness, breathing into it with acceptance. Dreams and memories, reflect on fears from past experiences without attachment, acknowledging their impermanence. Each moment of mindful observation strengthens the ability to transform fear into clarity, opening the Dharma gate to deeper insight and freedom. Part 7. Fear and compassion. Fear often isolates us, creating a sense of separation. Zen teaches that mindful attention to fear naturally leads to compassion. When we meet our own fear with openness, we recognize similar fears in others. This understanding cultivates empathy and interconnectedness. Aging, mortality, and change are shared human experiences. By approaching them mindfully, we develop both self-compassion and compassion for all beings. Part 8. Practice observing fear. Sit in a quiet, comfortable space. Bring to mind a fear related to aging, loss, or death. Name it silently. Notice how it feels in your body. Observe sensations without reacting. Breathe deeply, inviting relaxation and awareness. Repeat silently. This fear arises. It passes. It does not define me. Rest in the spacious awareness that observes fear, allowing it to transform into insight, clarity, and courage. Over days and weeks, this practice diminishes the tyranny of fear. What once seemed overwhelming becomes a doorway to wisdom. 9. Reflection. Fear, as teacher fear, is often viewed as something to escape, deny, or overcome. Zen presents a different path: to recognize fear, to sit with it, and to allow it to teach. Fear of aging or death is not a curse, but a Dharma gate, opening toward insight, courage, and compassion. In the Zen tradition, every challenge, every limitation, every encounter with mortality is an opportunity. Fear becomes a teacher when observed with mindfulness. It dissolves the illusion of control, reveals the impermanence of all forms, and invites presence. The novice, who admitted fear, discovered that acknowledgement is freedom. The elder who faced mortality found serenity in observation. Each of us, in turning toward fear rather than fleeing, discovers a Dharma gate leading to wisdom, courage, and the deep clarity of the present moment. Fear is not an enemy. It is a guide. It is a threshold. It is the doorway through which the heart of Zen opens. Chapter 8. Becoming the old tree in the monastery courtyard. There stands an ancient tree. Its bark is weathered and cracked, its trunk hollow in places. Once, many years ago, it was a slender sapling, reaching eagerly toward the sun. Now, it rises with quiet dignity, no longer striving, no longer impatient. Its hollow places shelter sparrows, its shade cools travelers, and its branches, though gnarled, hold nests and blossoms each spring. The monks call it Raju, no kitha old. Tree. Every day, without fail, the morning light falls through its leaves, scattering patterns on the stone path below. Pilgrims stop to rest in its shadow. Weary farmers tie their donkeys to its trunk, and children chase each other around its roots. It is not just a tree, it is a living sanctuary. In many ways, aging in Zen practice is like becoming this old tree, the youthful desire to grow ever taller, to prove oneself, to dominate the sky. These ambitions soften over the years. In their place comes a different kind of strength, the strength to remain, to give, to shelter, to nourish without needing recognition. The Bodhisattva ideal and the season of maturity Buddhism offers us the Bodhisattva ideal one who lives not just for their own liberation. In youth, this aspiration may feel abstract or aspirational, but as the years pass, life's difficulties carve humility into our hearts. We realize that every person carries their own burden, their own longing for peace. This recognition naturally deepens compassion. An old tree doesn't choose who can rest under its branches. It gives shade to the weary traveler, to the hunter, to the poet, to the one who has done wrong, and to the one who lives with virtue. Its gift is unconditional, arising simply from its being. In the same way, aging invites us into a broader, less judgmental love. We start to see that service is not always about doing great acts. It is about offering presence, patience, and kindness in the small spaces of everyday life. The transformation of time. When you are young, your time feels like a coin purse brimming with gold. You spend freely, sometimes wastefully, thinking the supply is endless. In aging, the purse becomes lighter, and each coin shines more brightly. This shift changes everything. We listen more deeply because we know there are fewer conversations left. We forgive more icily because we see the futility of clinging to old resentments. We savor small pleasures, a warm cup of tea, the laughter of a grandchild, the way sunlight falls across a page. Just as the old tree doesn't lament the spring sap it can no longer produce in abundance, we learn to cherish the richness that remains, the capacity to nurture others with our wisdom, our steadiness, and our lived experience. The hollow places, as gifts a hollow trunk, might look like a wound to the casual observer, but for birds, squirrels, and bees, it is a home. In the same way, the hollow's life carves into Uslas's failures. Grief-scan becomes sacred spaces for others if we allow them to be. Perhaps you have endured the death of a loved one, the crumbling of dreams, or the ache of regrets. These experiences, though painful, deepen your ability to hold the pain of others without turning away. You become someone who can listen without needing to fix, who can sit beside another's suffering without trying to make it disappear. This is the heart of becoming the old tree, turning your own weathered places into refuge for others. Patience, as a mature strength trees, do not hurry. They are the very embodiment of Wu, effortless action. Through storms and droughts, they simply remain, adjusting to each season's demands without panic or complaint. With age, we can cultivate this same patience. We stop expecting life to always conform to our plans. We learn to bend with the wind. Rather than break against it, we realize that the greatest transformations often happen quietly, over years, not days. A younger self might have rushed to give advice, to impose solutions, to demand results. The older self learns the subtle art of waiting, trusting that seeds sprout in their own time. Generosity without exhaustion, and our youth. Generosity often comes in the form of giving our energy, time, and labor. As we age, our energy may diminish, but our capacity for generosity of spirit expands. We can share stories that preserve wisdom for younger generations. Offer a non-judgmental ear to someone in pain. Smile at strangers, softening the edges of their day. Give our presence fully to each moment, which is the rarest and most precious gift. Generosity is not measured only in physical output. It is measured in sincerity, and the quality of attention we give to the people and beings around us. The practice: loving kindness, meditation preparation. Find a quiet space where you will not be disturbed. You may sit on a cushion, a chair, or even lie down if that is more comfortable for your body. Rest your hands gently in your lap. Close your eyes if it feels natural. Step 1. Begin with yourself. Take a few deep breaths, allowing the body to relax. Silently repeat, "May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I live with ease." Imagine yourself as an old tree, roots deep in the earth, branches open to the sky. Feel the stability and nourishment flowing through you. Step 2. Expand to loved ones. Picture someone you love, child, a friend, a partner, and repeat, "May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you live with ease." See them resting in your shade, receiving your quiet support. Step 3. Extend to younger generations. Visualize the young, perhaps people you know, perhaps unknown faces. Offer them the same wish. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. Step 4. Include all beings. Let your heart expand to include strangers, those you disagree with, those far away, and all creatures. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. Living as a sanctuary, as the old tree offers shelter to birds and shade to travelers. We too can become sanctuaries for others. This doesn't require grand gestures. It can be as simple as listening without interruption, offering a warm cup of tea, or sitting beside someone in silence. When we carry peace within us, others feel it. Our calm becomes their refuge. Our patience becomes their encouragement. Our acceptance becomes the mirror in which they see their own worth. Aging as fulfillment, not decline. The common cultural narrative frames aging as a process of loss of strength, beauty, relevance. But in the Zen view, aging is the blossoming of qualities that cannot exist without time: deep compassion, humility, equanimity, and the ability to see the whole of life without clinging to its parts. The old tree is not less than it was in its youth. It is simply different. It has moved from reaching toward the sky to rooting into the earth, from rapid growth to quiet giving. In this way, aging is not the end of the journey, but the flowering of the bodhisattva, path living for the benefit of all beings. Closing reflection: if you stand beneath the old tree in the monastery courtyard, you may notice something unusual. It does not cling to its leaves in autumn. When the time comes, they fall freely, drifting to the ground where they will nourish the soil. This is the great teaching of the old tree. Hold nothing too tightly. Give freely of what you have. Let go when the season changes. And in your letting go, become a place where life can continue to flourish. Chapter 9. The Beauty of the Empty Bowl. In a quiet corner of the monastery, sunlight spills through the open shoshi screens and settles upon a small tea bowl placed on a wooden table. At first glance, it looks ordinary, but as your eyes adjust to the dim light, you notice something unusual. Fine golden lines trace along its curves, glinting softly. These lines are not decorative flourishes painted by an artist. They are the result of careful repair. The bowl, once broken, has been mended through kintsugi, the Japanese art of joining fragments with lacquer mixed with powdered gold dot. In the presence of this bowl, one feels a stillness that is not just aesthetic but spiritual. The cracks, once signs of damage, now form the most beautiful patterns upon its surface. They are not hidden, they are celebrated. The gold does not erase the bowl's history, it honors it. For many of us, aging can feel like breaking. Our joints ache, our hair thins, our skin develops lines like rivers across a weathered landscape. But in the wisdom of Zen, these changes are not flaws to be concealed. They are records of living, evidence of the storms we have survived and the sunlight we have absorbed. Like the kintsugi bowl, we are not beautiful despite our cracks. We are beautiful because of them. Imperfection, as Illumination Buddhism teaches that life is marked by impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and the absence of a permanent self-anatta. These truths, far from being morbid, are liberating when understood deeply. They remind us that all forms change, and that change is not a betrayal of life, but its very nature. When the tea bowl shattered, it could not return to being what it once was. In that moment, it had two possible fates: to be discarded or to be remade. The artisan chose the second. In the same way, when life cracks us through illness, grief, betrayal, or the slow passage of time, we face a choice to close ourselves off and remain broken, or to allow the cracks to be filled with something luminous. What fills those cracks is not gold dust in our case, but qualities like compassion, patience, humility, and wisdom, the treasures of the spirit. In Zen, such transformation is not about fixing ourselves in the sense of erasing pain, but about integrating it so fully that it becomes inseparable from our beauty. The emptiness of the bowl, the beauty of the bowl, is not only in its golden seams but in its empty space. Zen often uses the metaphor of the empty bowl to teach about the mind. A bowl's usefulness lies in its emptiness, in the space where tea can be poured, rice can be served, or water can be carried. As we age, we may notice that our lives naturally begin to empty. Our schedules are less frantic. Our ambitions loosen their grip. Roles we once identified with, parent, worker, provider, shift or dissolve. If we resist this emptying, we feel loss. But if we embrace it, we discover space for reflection, for deeper relationships, for quiet joys, for simply being. The empty bowl does not mourn what is absent. It welcomes what may yet be placed within. In the same way, an open heart, free of clinging, welcomes life without demanding it fit our old expectations. Loss, as teacher in Kintsugi, the cracks are not filled with something that pretends to be the original clay. They are filled with something new, gold, which makes them more noticeable, not less. This is a radical act in a world obsessed with hiding its scars. Buddhism recognizes that loss is one of our greatest teachers. The first noble truth acknowledges the reality of suffering. The second noble truth explains that suffering often arises from attachment, from the way we resist change or wish life were different. When we lose something, youth, health, a loved one, a dream, our first impulse is often to patch the absence invisibly, to pretend the break never happened. But Zen invites us to make the break visible and sacred. A person who has known sorrow and emerged with compassion shines in a way that cannot be manufactured. Their kindness has depth because they understand the fragility of others. Their joy is more vivid because it is not taken for granted. This is the gold that fills their cracks. Aging as a path of Kintsugi, when we are young, we may fear the marks time will leave upon us. But with years comes the recognition that these marks are not stains to be scrubbed away. They are inscriptions in the calligraphy of life. Every wrinkle at the corner of the eye can be a record of laughter. Every scar on the body can be a testament to resilience. Every gray hair can be a banner of experience. Just as the artisan works slowly, carefully applying layer upon layer of gold lacquer to mend the bowl, life applies layers of insight to us, often through challenges we never asked. For we emerge not untouched by hardship, but transformed by it. The practice of seeing the gold diet is not always easy to see the beauty in our own cracks. Often we notice only the absence, what has been lost, and overlook the presence, what has been gained. In Zen, the shift begins with awareness. Daily awareness practice. Choose a quiet time. Sit in a space where you will not be interrupted. This could be by a window, in a garden, or at a simple table. Recall a hardship. Gently bring to mind a difficult experience from your life. Do not choose one so fresh that it still overwhelms you. Choose one where some healing has already occurred. Name the gold. Ask yourself, what did this teach me? Perhaps it gave you patience, empathy, courage, or humility. Breathe into gratitude. With each inhale, imagine the gold filling the cracks of that experience. With each exhale, release the belief that the crack made you less whole. Return to presence. Open your eyes. Look around you. Notice that the present moment is a vessel you can choose to fill with peace. The Kintsugi mind, the way of Kintsugi, is not just about objects, it is about perception. In the mind of Kintsugi, damage is not the end of beauty, but the beginning of a different kind of beauty. This perspective frees us from the endless striving for perfection that keeps so many trapped in dissatisfaction. A Kintsugi mind recognizes that everything changes, and this is not a flaw. That brokenness can be a stage in the journey toward wholeness. That beauty often emerges most vividly where the light meets the wound. This is the same wisdom expressed in the Buddhist notion of bodhisattva, the awakened heart that arises from the wish to relieve the suffering of all beings. When our own pain becomes a bridge to compassion for others, we are living the truth of the golden seam. Cracks as sources of light. There is a Japanese saying, Nana korobi yaoki, fall 7 times, stand up 8. In the West, this might sound like perseverance, but in the context of Zen, it is also about acceptance. We do not stand up in order to erase the fact that we fell. We stand up because falling is part of the path. The Zen poet Rumi expressed a similar truth when he said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Though Rumi's words come from a different tradition, they resonate with the same universal insight that the very places where we feel most vulnerable can become the very places where we are most connected to life. The tea ceremony of life. The cracked tea bowl is often used in tea ceremonies in Japan. When the guest receives such a bowl, they do not focus on its imperfections with pity. They honor it with mindfulness, turning it in their hands, appreciating how the gold lines tell a story. In life, we are both the tea bowl and the guest. We must learn to hold ourselves with the same gentle reverence, to see our history without shame, and to offer that self to the world without apology. Every conversation, every act of kindness, every quiet moment becomes part of a lifelong tea ceremony. And the older we become, the more fragrant the tea, steeped in the depth of our experience. Practice. Writing the gold. Step 1. Gather materials. Find a quiet place with a notebook and pen. Step 2. Reflect. Write about the hardships you've experienced, not as complaints, but as factual accounts. Step 3. Identify the gifts. For each hardship, note what positive qualities it cultivated in you. Did heartbreak teach you to love more consciously? Did illness deepen your appreciation for health? Did loss teach you to cherish what remains? Step 4. See the pattern. Look at your list. Imagine each gift as a seam of gold in the bowl of your life. Step 5. Bow in gratitude. End by bowing to yourself, to the people who walked with you, and to life itself. Closing reflection. The beauty of the empty bowl is that it is both open and whole. It does not cling to its contents. It simply holds them while they are there, then releases them when the time comes. We too can live like this. Our cracks, far from being signs of weakness, are invitations to let the gold of wisdom shine. Our emptiness, far from being a loss, is an openness that allows us to receive the present moment fully. Aging, like Kintsugi, is not about erasing the signs of time, but about illuminating them. And when the tea of life is poured into our bowl, we will hold it with both hands, offering it to the world with the quiet beauty of one who knows that nothing is truly broken. Chapter 10. Returning to the beginner's mind. Rain tapped gently against the wooden eaves of the mountain monastery. The sound was soft, steady, and without hurry. An elderly master sat in the meditation hall, his back straight yet relaxed, eyes half closed. When a sudden burst of heavier drops drummed against the roof, he laughed, not with irony or restraint, but with the innocent delight of a child discovering rain for the first time. One of his younger students, perplexed, asked, "Master, why do you laugh? We hear rain every day in this season." The master simply replied, "Because I have never heard this rain before." In that moment, the lesson was not about weather or sound, but about the nature of mind. Aging, when embraced in the spirit of Zen, can bring us back to a place before sophistication hardened our senses to Shoshin the beginner's mind. The essence of beginners, Minden Zen. Shoshin means approaching each moment without the weight of fixed ideas, judgments, or assumptions. It is the freshness of perception before the mind overlays its habitual stories. For the young beginners, mind often comes naturally. The world is vast, mysterious, and uncharted. But as years accumulate, so do conclusions. We begin to say, I know this. I've seen that before. I understand how things are. These mental shortcuts can be useful for survival, but they can also dull our capacity for wonder. Paradoxically, aging in Zen offers a path to return to this freshness, not because we forget everything we've learned, but because we learn to set it down when it is not needed. Like a wise traveler who has carried many heavy bags, we discover the relief of putting them down and feeling the lightness of just being. Letting go of knowing as years pass. We often pride ourselves on knowledge and expertise. Yet Zen whispers, do not cling to what you know. To prove, to defend our knowledge, something remarkable happens. The world becomes alive again. Wrote, the longer I live, the less I know. Yet each morning, the world surprises me more. The elder in Zen learns not to accumulate more mental possessions, but to live lightly, responding to each moment with a clear, open mind. This is not ignorance, it is wisdom without walls. Aging as the returning youth, we run forward, eager to gather experiences, possessions, and achievements. In middle age, we work to hold on to them, but in the later seasons of life, we may begin, if we allow, to loosen our grip. The body slows, the mind recognizes impermanence, not as an abstract truth, but as a lived reality. Friends pass away, roles change. The things we once sought begin to lose their urgency. This softening can feel like loss, but in Zen, it is a doorway. Without the constant drive to accumulate, we are free to simply be. Life's simplest offerings, a breeze, a bird call, a sip of tea, regain their ability to fill the heart completely. It is as if aging gently peels away the layers we thought were essential, revealing the clear, spacious awareness that was always here. The child and the elder meet there is a hidden kinship between the very young and the very old. Both are freed in different ways from the heavy machinery of ambition. A toddler, not yet encumbered by social masks, delights in the smell of a flower or the texture of a stone. An elder, having walked through decades of striving, may find themselves returning to the same wonder, not because they have never strived, but because they have outlived the need to be defined by it. In this sense, aging is a circle. The openness of youth meets the wisdom of years. Beginner's mind in later life is deeper because it is seasoned by compassion, humility, and the knowledge that every moment is precious. Shoshin in daily life beginner's mind is not reserved for meditation, cushions, or mountain monasteries. It can be practiced in the quiet ordinariness of daily life. Drinking tea, instead of sipping distractedly, feel the cup's warmth against your palms. Notice the rising steam, the shifting fragrance, the first touch of liquid on your lips. Even if you've drunk tea 1,000 times, remember, you have never drunk this tea before. Walking, feel the sensation of each step as if your feet are meeting the earth for the first time. Notice colors, shapes, and shadows as if the world has just been painted anew. Listening, hear a friend's voice not as the sum of years of conversations, but as a fresh expression of their presence in this moment. Every time we meet the ordinary with genuine openness, we dissolve the illusion that life is repetitive. The barriers to beginner's mind. Why do we lose this openness? In aging, the greatest barriers are not wrinkles or slower movement. They are the habits of mind that say, I already know, we think. This is just another rainy day. I've heard this story before. Nothing new can happen at my age. These are the shadows of cynicism and fatigue. they cloud the mind's sky. But Zen teaches that these clouds are passing. Behind them is the clear space of awareness. The practice is not to fight the clouds, but to notice them and let them drift away, revealing the sky once more. The freedom in not knowing gone of the most liberating aspects of beginner's mind is that it allows us to live without the burden of certainty. Not knowing is not weakness. It is a space of possibility. The elderly master's laughter at the rain was born from this space. He did not interpret the rain as good or bad, useful or inconvenient. He met it with pure presence, as if the sound itself were a gift. When we stop categorizing every experience, we discover that the world does not need our judgments to be beautiful. Meditation on Shoshin practice. Sit comfortably, either on a cushion or chair. Close your eyes and take a few slow, deep breaths. Bring your attention to the sounds around you. Imagine you have just arrived on Earth and are hearing these sounds for the very first time. Let curiosity replace labels. If thoughts arise, open your eyes and let the same freshness infuse your vision. Look around as if you've never seen this room, this light, these colors. Do this for a few minutes each day. Aging in Zen, the beginner's mind of old age, is different from that of youth. It is not naive, it is clear-eyed. It sees the cracks in the world's pottery, yet drinks deeply from it anyway. It understands that joy is not in controlling life's course, but in meeting it fully. It knows that love is not in possession, but in presence. When we live from this mind, the ordinary becomes luminous. We no longer need extraordinary events to feel alive. A bowl of rice, the morning sun, the laughter of a friend, these are enough. Closing reflection, the master who laughed at the rain was not teaching a clever koan. He was showing the truth that life is always new. Aging is not the narrowing of possibilities, but the opening of vision, if we allow it. Every breath is the first breath. Every step is the first step. Every sound of rain is the first sound of rain. When we live this way, we are free, not because we have returned to youth, but because we have discovered the timeless youth that has always been hidden within us. Chapter 11. The gift of slow time. The winter monastery courtyard lay hushed under a blanket of new snow. Each flake had fallen in silence, layering the world in white, softening every edge and muffling every sound. A monk in a gray robe walked across the courtyard with deliberate care, his straw sandals making small, crisp impressions in the untouched snow. Each step was a gentle conversation with the earth, slow, patient, and entirely without haste. In Zen, slowness is not simply about moving without speed. It is about moving with presence. In the winter of life, as the body begins to naturally slow, a profound gift is offered: the chance to experience reality without the feverish rush that consumes so much of youth. Time begins to reveal itself not as something to be conquered or filled, but as an open space in which to truly live. The shift from speed to stillness. When we are young, life often feels like a race. We chase after goals, deadlines, relationships, and experiences as though the more we gather, the more we become. In this mode, time is something scarce, something we are always trying to outrun. We gulp down our meals, skim conversations, hurry through walks, and rarely notice how the light falls on the ground. But as the years pass, the body teaches us a different way. We cannot run as fast, lift as much, or multitask without strain. The mind, too, begins to crave simplicity over complexity, depth over speed. This change can feel, at first, like a loss. Yet in Zen, it is a profound invitation and opening into slow time. Slow time is not wasted time. It is ripe time that holds the weight and sweetness of a fully ripened fruit. It is the kind of time where the world is no longer blurred by rushing. Instead, each moment emerges like a single, perfect flower in the field of awareness. The Zen appreciation of slowness. Zen monasteries are built to encourage this kind of relationship with time. The paths between buildings are not shortcuts. They are long enough to require mindfulness. Meals are taken in silence, with each bite chewed and tasted completely. Even the act of sweeping leaves from a path is done without hurrying, allowing the body and breath to move together like a quiet poem. In Japanese Zen, there is the concept of mada, space between things. In music, it is the pause between notes. In conversation, it is the silence between words. In life, ma is the spaciousness that allows beauty to appear. Without ma, everything is crowded and rushed. With ma, life breathes. Aging, by slowing our steps and making us more deliberate, naturally introduces more ma into our days. The space between breaths becomes wider. The pauses between actions lengthen, and in that space, a deeper kind of beauty begins to emerge. A winter parable. There is a story told in a Zen temple high in the mountains. An elderly abbot, known for his radiant calm, was once approached by a young monk who asked, "Master, what is the secret to your peace?" The abbot smiled and poured tea into the monk's cup. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he poured not in a steady stream, but drop by drop. The young monk shifted impatiently. Finally, the abbot spoke. "When I was your age, I drank tea in gulps. I walked quickly. I finished one task only to chase the next. My life was full, but my heart was empty. Now, I pour tea drop by drop, and each drop is my life. I have learned that a single drop can be enough." The young monk looked at his half-filled cup and, for the first time, noticed the steam curling upward, the delicate fragrance of the leaves, the warmth in his hands, the depth that slowness brings. When we slow down, we notice things that were always there, but hidden by speed, the way light shifts across the floor as the day moves, the texture of old wood beneath our fingertips, the layered sound of wind moving through different kinds of trees, the quiet joy of completing one task with total attention. Slowness also changes our relationships. Conversations take on more depth because we are not waiting for our turn to speak. We are actually listening. Our care for others becomes gentler and more patient. We begin to feel time not as a rope pulling us forward, but as a stream carrying us gently. Aging is the teacher of slow time that aches in the joints, the need to rest more often, the longer time it takes to accomplish tasks. These are not simply signs of decline. They are the body's way of aligning us with a more natural rhythm. In youth, the clock is a whip. In age, it becomes a bell, ringing gently to remind us that the present moment is enough. Zen practice teaches that there is no arrival point, no future moment more valuable than the one we inhabit now. Slowness makes this teaching tangible, allows us to inhabit the now, not as a passing point, but as a dwelling place. Practicing the gift of slow time, you do not need a monastery or a snow-covered courtyard to receive the gift of slow time. You can bring it into your life through simple, intentional practices. Walking meditation. Choose a path, perhaps across your garden, down a hallway, or along a quiet street. Walk half as fast as usual. Feel each step as the heel touches the earth. The weight shifts and the toes lift. Let your breath guide your pace. Walking becomes not a means to an end, but the end itself. Half-speed day once a week. Commit to performing all tasks at half speed. Eat slowly, speak slowly, even wash your hands slowly. Notice how this changes the texture of your day. You may find that what you lose in speed, you gain in richness. Listening without hurrying conversation. Allow a few breaths of silence before responding. Let the other person's words sink in fully. The simple pause deepens connection and transforms ordinary exchanges into moments of genuine meeting. The inner alchemy of slowness is slowness deepens. Something remarkable happens. Our relationship with time itself transforms. The future loses its grip. The past softens its hold. We are no longer being pulled forward or backward. We are simply here. This is the heart of Zen, not to escape time, but to live so fully within it that it becomes timeless. Aging, with all its slowing and softening, is a profound teacher of this truth. The slower we move, the more we see. The more we see, the more we love. And the more we love, the more life becomes not a series of tasks to complete, but a field to wander in with wonder. Closing practice. Winter's breath. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Imagine a winter landscape, a hush of snow, the stillness of the trees, the soft crunch of each step. Let your breath move as slowly as falling snowflakes. Inhale gently, pause. Exhale gently, pause. As you breathe, feel yourself settling into the rhythm of slow time. There is no rush. The world is complete. In this moment, you are complete. In this moment. Chapter 12. Leaving well. Graceful endings. The late afternoon sun falls gently upon the temple courtyard, bathing everything in a warm amber light. The shadows of the wooden eaves stretch long across the stone path. In the main hall, an elderly Zen teacher stands before the altar, palms pressed together in gathering. The incense curls upward like a thin bridge between earth and sky. It is his final day as the temple's abbot. Tomorrow, the role will pass to a younger successor. After decades of guiding students, sweeping the temple steps, and watching seasons turn, he now prepares to bow one last time in this place he has called home. His eyes rest on the familiar grain of the wooden floor, worn smooth by countless footsteps, his own, those of monks, and those of visitors seeking solace. The air holds a stillness, as though the temple itself is pausing with him. He takes a deep breath and bows deeply, his back bending like the arc of the setting sun. This bow is not merely a farewell, it is a gesture of acceptance, of gratitude, and of completion. In Zen, endings are not failures. They are part of the natural rhythm. Like the final note of a song that allows silence to follow, endings as teachers in the modern world. Endings are often seen as losses, to be feared or avoided. The closing of a door, the final chapter of a book, the last heartbeat of a day. We resist them, clinging to what is familiar. But in Zen, every ending is a teacher. Impermanence, anicca, is one of the 3 marks of existence in Buddhist teaching. It reminds us that all things arise and all things pass away. Without endings, there would be no space for beginnings. Without the last breath of winter, spring could not arrive. A graceful ending is not the abrupt slamming of a door, but the slow and deliberate act of laying something down with care. It is bowing to a chapter of life and saying, "Thank you, you have served your purpose. I release you." When we learn to leave well, we discover that the act of letting go can be a gift to ourselves, to others, and to the world. A symbol of letting go in Zen practice, the gasho, placing the palms together in front of the heart and bowing, is a simple gesture with profound meaning. The hands represent duality, self and other, life and death, joy and sorrow. When we bring them together, we acknowledge the unity of all things. Bowing in gasho at an ending is an act of reconciliation. It says, "I honor what has been. I release my grasp on what I cannot keep. I welcome the unknown with open hands." When the Zen teacher closes the temple for the last time, his gasho is not a performance for others. It is a conversation between his heart and the world, a wordless thank you. Aging and the art of completion. As we age, we face more endings. Careers conclude, children leave home, friends depart, and eventually the body itself prepares for its final rest. These endings can feel like waves eroding the shoreline of our identity. But Zen offers another perspective. Aging is the ripening of the fruit, the readiness to release the seed so that life may continue in another form. In youth, we strive to acquire, to hold on, to build. In maturity, we learn the wisdom of placing things down. An elder who knows how to leave well is like a tree in autumn, releasing its leaves in a quiet rain of gold. The tree does not mourn the loss, it trusts the cycle. To leave well is to step away without bitterness. to hand over the reins without resentment, to speak good wishes for the path that continues without you. It is to find dignity in the bow, peace in the turning away, and joy in the knowledge that nothing is truly lost. Fear of the final ending, beneath all smaller endings, lies the greatest, ending death itself. Much of our resistance to parting ways, whether with people, possessions, or roles, is rooted in the fear of mortality. Zen does not encourage denial of death, nor does it frame death as an enemy. Instead, it invites us to prepare for it as we would for an honored guest. When we meet small endings with grace, we rehearse for the ultimate bow. The Zen monk Ikek Sojin once said, "Many paths lead from the foot of the mountain, but at the peak we all gaze at the single bright moon." Endings are those paths leading us toward the same summit of release. Practicing graceful endings in daily life, we do not have to wait for great milestones to practice leaving well. The art of graceful endings can be woven into the fabric of daily living. Finishing a meal with gratitude before rising from the table. Ending a conversation with full attention rather than drifting away distracted. Completing a task without rushing to the next, allowing yourself to savor the satisfaction of closure. Parting from a friend with a genuine smile and a blessing. Each small act of completion is a reminder that we are always moving through cycles of beginning, living, and letting go. The gratitude letter practice. One way to consciously honor endings is through the gratitude letter. This practice is a mirror for the soul, reflecting both the beauty and the pain of our journey. Steps. Sit quietly in a space where you will not be disturbed. Bring to mind the life you have lived, its joys, its challenges, its ordinary days. Write a letter addressed to my life. In it, acknowledge the gifts you have received, the regrets you carry, the lessons you have learned. Express your thanks for every step of the journey, even those that were hard to walk. End your letter with a bow to yourself, honoring your courage, your mistakes, your persistence, and your love. This letter is not about perfection. It is about wholeness. When you can look at your life, cracks, scars, and all, and say, "I am grateful," you are already practicing the art of leaving well. A story of a monk's last Bowen, a small mountain monastery. There lived an old monk named Renshin. He had tended the vegetable gardens for over 50 years, rising before dawn each day to water the rows and pull the weeds. The younger monks often asked him how he managed such devotion without boredom. Renshin would simply smile and say, "Every carrot is my teacher. Every leaf is my friend." One spring morning, the abbot told Renshin that it was time for him to rest. His knees had grown weak, and his hands could no longer hold the tools steadily. Another monk would take over the garden. That evening, walked alone among the rows, touching each plant gently. At the garden gate, he placed his palms together in gassho and bowed deeply. In that bow was all his love for the soil, his respect for the plants, and his joy for the one who would carry. On the work, when asked later if he was sad to leave the garden, Renshin replied, "How can I be sad? The garden was never mine. I was simply given the joy of caring for it a while." The peace of completion. When we leave well, we free ourselves from the chains of regret and resentment. We recognize that our time with each person, place, or role was alone, not an ownership. Aging gives us the clarity to see that the beauty of life is not in how long we hold on, but in how gracefully we let go. The bow becomes a gift, a closing act of love. To leave well is to step into the next moment with open hands and an open heart, trusting that the same river of life that carried us here will carry us onward. Practice the final bow of the day. At the end of each day, before going to sleep, stand or sit quietly. Bring your palms together in gassho. Bow deeply, acknowledging the day, its gifts, its challenges, its beauty. Release it completely, as though closing the door to a room you will not return to. Over time, This simple act trains the heart to leave well, so that when the greater endings come, you will already know how to bow without fear in the stillness. Of the empty temple, the old teacher takes one final breath before stepping outside. The sky is painted with the soft colors of dusk. He turns, places his palms together, and bows. The door closes with a gentle click, not as a barrier, but as a blessing. The path ahead is quiet and open. Chapter 13, Fearless Beauty in the Stillness of Early Morning. When the mist clings to the valley and the first light filters through the pines, the students of Master Hashin would gather in the courtyard. They spoke in hushed tones, yet their eyes often wandered toward the master's face. It was not the face of youthland's traced gentle rivers across his skin. His hair silvered like the winter moon, his hands worn from decades of work in the garden and meditation hall. One day, a young novice whispered to another, "He looks like a mountain at sunrise." And indeed, there was something unshakable in his present serenity that did not waver, a quiet radiance that seemed to glow from within. When asked the secret of his beauty, the master simply said, "It is the face I have earned by meeting each day without turning away." The illusion of beauty in the world beyond the monastery walls. Beauty is often measured by symmetry, youth, and the absence of perceived flaws. Smooth skin, bright eyes, and an unlined face are praised as the highest forms of attractiveness. Yet, in Zen, this is a narrow and fragile understanding of beauty, one that clings to what cannot last. The body is a guest in time. The skin will crease, the hair will fade in color, the joints will stiffen, and the eyes will dim. If we anchor our sense of worth to these fleeting conditions, we inevitably suffer. This suffering comes not from aging itself, but from the resistance to it, the desperate attempt to hold on to something that was never meant to stay the same. Zen teaches a different truth. Beauty is not erased by time, it is transformed by it. The radiance of inner stillness. When you meet a person whose presence feels like resting under a great tree or standing before a calm sea, you are witnessing fearless beauty. It has nothing to do with cosmetics, youth, or perfection. It is the light of equanimity, the capacity to remain steady in both joy and sorrow. To meet impermanence without grasping, this inner radiance comes from living with awareness. Mindfulness softens the face because it softens the heart. Compassion smooths the voice because it removes the sharpness of judgment. A life of acceptance creates eyes that see without fear, and such eyes shine with a depth that youth alone cannot give. The master's story when Master Hashin was a young monk. He too was concerned about his appearance. He wanted to look dignified, respected, even admired. But during his first winter at the monastery, he fell gravely ill. Fever raged, his skin blistered, and for weeks he hovered between life and death. When he finally recovered, his reflection startled him. He looked older, weaker, and far from the image he had once tried to maintain. He felt a pang of grief for the face he had lost. But one morning, as he was sweeping snow from the temple steps, the abbot approached him and said, "Your face has changed. It is the face of one who has survived the cold and learned to bow to it. Do not hide it, let others see what endurance looks like." From that day forward, Hashin stopped trying to preserve what was gone. Instead, he began to live so that each mark, each crease, each shift in his body would tell a story of courage and kindness. Over time, people began to notice a quiet glow in him, not because his face had returned to youth, but because his heart had stopped resisting change. The fearlessness of astute. Be fearless in beauty does not mean never feeling self-conscious. It means recognizing that your worth has never depended on the number of wrinkles you have or the shade of your hair. In fact, fearless beauty blooms when you are no longer at war with yourself. It is the look of someone who has made peace with their life, its joys, its regrets, its scars. When you live in alignment with truth, there is no need to hide behind masks, whether physical or emotional. A wrinkle may be the memory of 1,000 smiles. A scar may be the story of a lesson learned. A bent posture may be the sign of decades spent bowing to life in reverence. The eyes that see clearly Zen often speaks of the eyes as windows of the awakened mind. Outer beauty can charm, but it is the eyes that reveal the quality of the spirit. When you look into the eyes of someone who has practiced deep presence, you may notice that they are luminous not in a superficial way, but in their clarity. Such eyes do not look at you, they look into you. They are not clouded by judgment or greed. They rest in the simple recognition that we are both part of the same impermanent world. In this way, fearless beauty is contagious. When we see it in another, we are reminded that we too can live in such a way that our presence comforts rather than competes, includes rather than excludes. Aging as a blooming many see, aging as a slow withering. Zen invites us to see it as a different kind of flowering. A spring blossom is beautiful because it is new, but an autumn chrysanthemum has a richness, a depth of color, and a fragrance that only comes with the turning of seasons. When we stop fighting the passage of time, we begin to notice the gifts it brings: patience, understanding, discernment, humility. These qualities, when nurtured, radiate outward as beauty far more enduring than youth's fleeting glow. The Japanese art of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold mirrors. This truth, the cracks are not hidden but highlighted, the vessel more beautiful than before. In the same way, the cracks of age-line spots, softening skin can be seen as golden seams, testaments to the life we have lived. The beauty that serves there is another dimension to fearless beauty. It is not self-contained, but given freely to others. Just as an old tree shades the weary traveler, a person grounded in compassion offers their presence as a refuge. When your beauty is not tied to your own reflection, you can use it to reflect light onto others. A kind word, a patient listening ear, a steady hand offered in help. These are the gestures that make you beautiful in the deepest sense. This is why the Bodhisattva path is often depicted with serene, smiling figures. Their beauty is not for themselves. It is the natural fragrance of a heart dedicated to the well-being of all. Living without the mask, many of us live behind invisible masks, shaped by the fear of judgment. We adjust our words, hide our emotions, and present only the parts of ourselves we think will be accepted. But every mask is a barrier to true connection. When you practice fearless beauty, you begin to let these masks fall away. You laugh when something is funny, even if your teeth are imperfect. You speak honestly, even if your voice shakes. You show up as you are, trusting that those who truly see you will be drawn not to your perfection, but to your authenticity. Cultivating fearless beauty is not an accident. It grows through deliberate practice, much like a garden. Mindfulness softens the edges of the mind, removing the inner harshness that so often shows on the face. Compassion warms the heart, and warmth is always beautiful. Acceptance frees the body from the tension of trying to be someone else. Gratitude lights the eyes, and eyes lit with gratitude can transform a room. Every act of loving presence shapes not only your spirit, but your appearance daily. Practice the mirror of kindness each morning. Stand before a mirror. Do not rush. Look into your own eyes as if you are meeting an old friend. Smile not the forced smile for photographs, but the gentle, knowing smile that says, "I am grateful you are here." Repeat silently, "May I be kind to myself today. May I see beauty in what is real. May my presence bring peace to others." Observe how your face softens, how your breath deepens. Let this warmth stay with you as you move through the day. Over time, you may notice that others respond differently to you, not because you have changed your face, but because you have changed the way you inhabit it. Closing reflection, the rain had begun to fall on the monastery roof. Master Hashin sat with his students in the meditation hall, the soft drumming of the drops filling the silence. One student asked, "Master, how can we keep our beauty as we grow old?" The master chuckled, the sound like wind in pine needles. "Do not keep it," he said. "Let it flow through you, like the rain flows into the earth. What you give to others becomes the beauty that remains. In the end, fearless beauty is not about what you preserve, but about what you share. It is the kind of beauty that makes the world gentler simply because you are in it." Chapter 1 for living as the Dharma. The old master's death was quiet. There was no dramatic announcement, no solemn chanting to signal the final moment. He simply sat beneath the shade of the temple's persimmon tree, eyes half closed, as if he were listening to a distant bell. When the young monk came to bring him tea, he found the cup still steaming on the table, untouched. The master's breath had already stilled, but his face was radiant, not in the rigid stillness of death, but in the peace of someone who had already been living as though every moment were complete. In Zen, there is a saying, "The real teaching is the teacher's life." Words, scriptures, and chants are signposts. They point toward the truth, but are not the truth themselves. The Dharma, the living law of reality, is not something that can be fully contained in books, or even spoken by the most eloquent master. It is revealed through the way a person walks, breathes, bows, laughs, eats, works, and dies. The master had never written a single book, yet his presence was a library. His silence contained entire volumes. The embodiment of the teaching when we speak of living as the Dharma, we mean allowing our life to become so integrated with the principles of truth, compassion, and wisdom that there is no longer a division between practice and living. For some, the Dharma is a set of teachings to be studied. For others, it becomes a moral compass. But for those who walk the Zen path deeply, the Dharma becomes as natural as breathing. You don't practice kindness. You simply are kind. You don't practice mindfulness. You live mindfully. Even when no one is watching. In aging, this integration can ripen fully. When youth fades, when ambition loses its teeth, and when the urgency to prove oneself dissolves, what remains is the truth of how one has lived. By the time the hair is white and the hands are lined, your life itself is already your sutra. The flow of time, as a teacher the master used to say, a river does not resist the ocean. When its journey is done, it becomes the sea. Aging well in Zen is not about resisting time. It is about flowing with it, allowing the years to polish you as stones are polished by water. Some stones resist trying to hold their sharp edges. Others surrender and become smooth, shining in the sun. In the monastery garden, there was a rock the master loved. It had been there for centuries, weathered by rain, wind, and frost. It was not perfect. It had cracks, moss, and uneven edges, but its very imperfection was what made it beautiful. The master would rest his hand on it and tell the novices, "This rock has learned the Dharma. It does not hurry, it does not resist, it simply remains." In this way, time becomes not an enemy, but a great sculptor. If we let it, it shapes us into something humble, grounded, and luminous. Fear transformed into freedom. The ultimate lesson of living as the Dharma is freedom, not the freedom of doing whatever you want, but the freedom of not being enslaved by fear, desire, or the constant push and pull of likes and dislikes. When a young monk once asked the master, "What is the highest teaching?" the master replied, "When there is nothing to fear, there is nothing to defend. When there is nothing to defend, you can love without limit." Aging can strip away the illusions we once clung to, youth, possessions, status, and in doing so, it frees us. What once seemed important may no longer hold weight, and in that freedom, compassion naturally grows. You begin to see others, not as rivals or obstacles, but as fellow travelers, each carrying their own bundle of joys and sorrows. The Dharma in ordinary, Acts 1 of the most profound truths in Zen is that the Dharma is never separate from the ordinary. The master did not only teach in the meditation hall, his lessons were in the way he poured tea, how he placed his sandals neatly before entering a room, how he listened without interrupting. For him, each act was an opportunity to embody awakening. Sweeping the garden was not a chore. It was clearing the mind. Listening to rain was not leisure. It was hearing the great sermon of nature. Eating a simple bowl of rice was not just nourishment. It was gratitude made visible to live, as the Dharma is to let every gesture, no matter how small, reflect awareness and compassion. The soundless sermon when the master passed, no great speeches were made. Instead, the abbot asked all the monks to spend the day in silence, going about their work as the master had, with care, attention, and joy. By evening, the temple was alive with the sound of the wind in the pines and the smell of incense. One novice, struggling to hold back tears, asked an elder monk, "Why did the master not leave us more words?" The elder smiled gently. "He left us his life. That is more than words. This is the essence of living as the Dharma, that your presence becomes the teaching long after your voice is gone. Impermanence as liberation, many fear impermanence, thinking it means loss. But in Zen, impermanence, anicca, is liberation. If nothing can be held onto forever, then we are free from the burden of clinging." The master often compared life to a flower, beautiful precisely because it will wilt. In old age, the truth of impermanence becomes impossible to ignore. The body slows, friends pass away. Seasons seem to turn more quickly, and yet this very awareness can deepen appreciation for the smallest moments: the warmth of tea in your hands, the laughter of children, the softness of twilight. When you accept impermanence fully, each breath becomes infinitely precious. The practice of being. One of the greatest misconceptions about spiritual practice is that it is about achieving something. But in Zen, the highest realization is not about becoming more, it's about becoming less. Less burdened by the past, less anxious about the future, less tangled in the stories the mind weaves. The master's final teaching to his students was simple: sit, breathe, be. Not be someone, not be better, not be enlightened, just be. When you live like this, your life itself is the Dharma. Not because you have mastered great concepts, but because you have dissolved into the flow of life. Aging as the full bloom of practice. Youth is the springtime of practice, vibrant, energetic, full of discovery. Middle age is the summer, active, productive, filled with responsibility. But aging is the autumn, the season of harvest, of offering back what you have learned to others. In the autumn of life, the bodhisattva path, living for the benefit of all beings, can be embodied most fully. You have gathered enough wisdom to guide others, enough patience to listen deeply, and enough humility to know that your journey is still unfolding until your last breath. Living fully, leaving lightly. The master's last day was no different from any other. He swept the courtyard, shared tea with a visiting monk, and watched the evening sun touch the mountains. There was no sense of finality, only the continuity of presence. To live fully means to meet each moment without holding back. To leave lightly means to let go when the time comes, without resistance or regret. When you live as the Dharma, these two, living and leaving, are not separate. Practice sitting in the living. Dharma, find a quiet place where you can sit. Undisturbed, sit comfortably with your spine upright but relaxed. Close your eyes and bring your attention to your breath. Feel it enter and leave without trying to control it. Let go of goals, judgments, and expectations. There's nothing to achieve. You are not trying to become someone else. Notice your thoughts as they arise, like leaves floating on a stream. Do not chase them, let them pass. Feel the fullness of being alive, the weight of your body, the sound of the room, the rhythm of your heart. Rest in the awareness that this moment, just as it is your Dharma. Remain for at least 20 minutes. When you open your eyes, carry this sense of presence into your next action, however small. Conclusion: the lotus that blooms with time. In the teachings of Zen Buddhism, aging is not a shadow creeping across our days, but a soft, illuminating light, the golden hour of life that reveals the textures, shapes, and subtleties once hidden in the brightness of youth. Just as a lotus blooms, slowly rooted in the quiet mud, so too does wisdom emerge from the slow, patient unfolding of years. To live deeply into old age is not simply to count more seasons, but to feel each one more fully, more gently, more gratefully. Many fear aging because they equate it with loss, the loss of health, of beauty, of energy, of people we love, and ultimately of life itself. Yet Zen invites us to look again, to see through the lens of impermanence, anicca, and emptiness, nyat, not as grim truths, but as liberating realities. Impermanence is the very thing that makes each moment precious. Emptiness is the space in which transformation is possible. Without change, there would be no birth, no laughter, no music, no seasons, no growth. Without the openness of emptiness, we could not learn, adapt, forgive, or love anew. The fear of aging melts when we shift our focus from what is slipping away to what is continually arriving. Each breath is new, each sunrise unique, each conversation unrepeatable. The wrinkles on our faces are not merely signs of decline, but maps, etched lines that tell the story of storms weathered. Joys embraced, tears shed, and smiles offered. The stoop in our posture is not just gravity's pull, but a bow to the humility that life teaches us over time. The slower pace is not weakness, but an invitation to notice what we once rushed past. In Zen monasteries, it is often the elders who are the quiet pillars of the Sangha. They may not work in the gardens as swiftly as the young, but their very presence is a teaching, a stillness that radiates through the courtyard, like incense smoke curling into the air. Are fewer, but when spoken, they land with the weight of mountains. This is the beauty of aging in Zen. What is unnecessary falls away, and what remains is the essence: compassion without agenda, joy without grasping, presence without distraction. To live this way is to transform fear into wisdom. Fear is constricting. It narrows our vision and tenses our hearts. Wisdom expands. It softens our gaze and opens us to the whole of life. Beauty, too, shifts with age. It becomes less about symmetry or youthfulness and more about the quality of being we bring into the world. The compassionate eyes of an elder, the gentle patience of one who has endured, the tender humor of someone who has made peace with their own imperfections, these shine brighter than the glitter of unlined skin or quick steps. Aging also deepens. Our relationship with death in the West, death is often hidden, feared, or spoken of only in hushed tones. In Zen, it is not avoided, but befriended. Maranasati, the mindfulness of mortality, is not morbid, but awakening. It reminds us that time is limited and therefore infinitely precious. Knowing we will one day take our last breath makes each current breath more vivid. Knowing our days are numbered makes this day, this conversation, this meal, this walk in the garden all the more sacred. Zen practice teaches us to greet each ending with a bow, to let go with gratitude rather than clinging. This bow, whether to a passing season, a departing friend, a closing chapter of life, is both an acknowledgement of impermanence and an expression of trust in the great unfolding. Just as autumn leaves do not resist their fall, we too can learn to release with grace, confident that the soil of our lives will nourish what comes next, whether in this form or another. The journey of aging in Zen is not solitary. It is a gift. To the world, as we mature, we can become like the old tree in the monastery courtyard, offering shelter, wisdom, and quiet strength to those around us. Our experiences, both the joys and the heartbreaks, can become a lantern for others. Navigating their own storms, the Bodhisattva vow to live for the benefit of all beings finds a deeper expression in later years. When personal ambition has softened and the heart's greatest pleasure is in giving, and so the transformation is complete. Fear becomes wisdom, not because we have eliminated uncertainty, but because we have learned to live within it. Loss becomes beauty, not because it is painless, but because it carves out space for compassion and connection. Aging becomes awakening, not because it is easy, but because it strips away illusion and brings us face to face with reality, which is always here, always now, always fresh. If Zen Buddhism could offer one final teaching on aging, it might be this: your life is already whole, even as it changes. Nothing is missing, nothing is wasted. Every breath is the Dharma speaking through you. The rain on the roof, the warmth of a teacup, the sound of a friend's laughter. These are not trivial moments. They are the universe bowing to itself. Through your awareness, so we end where we began, with awareness. The dawn of awareness shows us that aging is not an enemy, but an ally, guiding us deeper into truth. It reveals that what fades on the outside can illuminate from within. It teaches us to walk more slowly, to bow more often, to listen more deeply, and to live as if each moment is both the first and the last. When the time comes to take the final bow, may we do so with the same grace as the Zen master, closing the temple doors. No resistance, no regret, only gratitude for the long, strange, beautiful journey. And may our lives, like the master's, be a sermon without sound, a living Dharma, leaving behind not fear, but the fragrance of kindness, wisdom, and fearless beauty for those who walk the path after us.